Right, good afternoon everybody and welcome to the meeting of the Planning Committee for North Area. Just to let you know, the meeting is being recorded and it's a hybrid meeting, which means some people who will be taking part are doing so remotely, but all the members, all the councillors who will be making the decisions are sat in the room. I'll just start off with a couple of housekeeping, the usual housekeeping things. So for people attending today, there is water over on the side. Please feel free to go and get a drink if you need one. There are toilets in the main reception. There's no fire drill planned for today, so if the alarm goes off, it's the real thing. For members of the public, if you head out that way where Mr. Melhewish is pointing, and I'm told that we need to head the other way and meet at the back round by Hanover House. But hopefully there won't be anything. So we'll go straight into apologies for absence. I've received one apology from Councillor Ferguson, for whom a substitution has been made, and that's Councillor Redman, and I can confirm that Councillor Redman has attended all the training. We're all here otherwise, aren't we? Oh no, there is one. Councillor Craven. No, it seems that we have no other apologies for absence. So declarations of interest. For members who have the committee papers before them, there's guidance on page 9, but can I hand over to Ms. Lehman, please, our legal officer, who can advise on declarations of interest.
Members, I've been asked to advise on declarations of interest where members of the committee are dual-hatted. Page 9 says that there's a list of all the town and parish councils that the members of this DC committee sit on. But for the purposes of the members of the public, can any member that has deferred an application to the chair under the deferral process, that is before a matter that is before committee today, can you please raise your hands, and in turn, can you confirm that you continue to have an open mind and will listen to all the merits of the argument before casting your vote? So can I take a show of hands of those members that has participated in the consultation stage at parish and town council level on any matter that is before the agenda today? So that's Mike, Bob Gilmer.
Confirm I did send in comments to ensure that the applications on page 21 and 27 were considered by the chair to bring to this meeting, and they were, so thank you for that. And I still have an open mind on those two applications.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And can we ask for any declarations of interest for members who are on drainage boards, please? And just make a note of those.
And then any other declarations of interest under the code of conduct. If anybody got any declarations of interest, this is the time to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go any further, just for the members of the public here today, just to explain, I'm Councillor Cathy Pearson, chair of the committee, and Councillor Matt Martin is vice chair. To our left are officers from Democratic Services and Legal, and to our right are the planning officers and the officers who will be presenting the papers. All the councillors making decisions today are at the wings of the table. So I'll then go into public question time. Okay. Before we move on, are there any further declarations of interest from committee members? Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. 3823 401 personal interest.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Pages 21, 27 are in my ward, but I've taken no part in any discussions on them. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't seem to be any more. Thank you.
And Chair, can I just clarify Councillor Bradford's interest He's declaring an NRI in application 3823-00001 as the application is his nephew. So Councillor Bradford will leave the room when this application comes before committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move then to public question time. There are a number of people who have notified us that they wish to speak on applications, and then I'll call you forward at the time when we'll be discussing those applications. I'm also advised that during this time, if anybody wishes to speak to make a general point about the council, you are able to do so now, but not on any point relating to any application before us today. No? Okay. Yes.
Can I just mention to those people joining the meeting online, it would be helpful if you could turn your camera off and then turn them on when you come to your item of public speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move now to page 11, which is the first of the planning applications. Oh, one more housekeeping matter. If anybody has a mobile phone, we'd be very grateful if you could switch it on or put it onto silent, please. Thank you. Right, okay, that takes us to the first planning application regarding land northwest of Waldron's Lane, Wendon. And Mr. Evans will be taking us through this application.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a field to the north of Perry Green, which is just outside of Wemden. The site itself is located within a countryside location, indicated by the circle here. Access to the site is via Waldron's Lane, which comes via this junction here within Perry Green, which leads off to Wemden or via the southwest towards the A39 in the Cannington direction. The application is seeking partly retrospective consent for the change of use of the field to a dog walking and training exercise use. The site is outlined in red in the top right-hand corner here. There has been an erection of deer stop-proof fencing along the centre of the site, along the centre of the field, and a copse of tree planting has been carried out to the northern end of the site here. An existing access was permitted some years ago, but is currently being used as access to a car parking area just within the site here. If I go down to this image here, this shows a little bit more clarity. The car parking area is here. The site itself is located off of Waldron's Lane, where there are numerous agricultural and equestrian accesses, as well as further into Perry Green, you have residential and commercial development taking place. Move on to the next slide. This shows the site in a little bit more detail. So in terms of the proposed works, it is proposed to have a teaching shed, which will be a timber-built construction located here. This will be used by the the dog training and exercise class and also be used for teaching and instruction during inclement weather. There will also be a storage and maintenance shed located here. These buildings would be situated within an area where there would be tree planting and landscaping, hedge screening, as you can see on the site plan there. It is also proposed to enhance the ecology value of the site by providing a pond within the site here alongside the tree planting that's already taken place. To round off the application, the site itself will be screened by hedgerow planting along the stop-proof fencing along this boundary here. So in terms of the proposal, there will be two buildings erected as part of the scheme. So we have the teaching shed here as a mono-pitched single-storey building finished in timber cladding, and likewise the storage shed, which will be partly open, but also be timber clad within the site. Just take members through this photograph. So this is the view taken from Waldron's Lane looking southwards. This is the existing agricultural access, which is currently being used into the car parking area, which is located behind the car here. As you can see, there's a gravelled area used by vehicles entering and provides sufficient space for 12 vehicles to park within the site. Beyond that, you can see a timber structure, which is temporary, I believe. There will be, the teaching shed will be of a more substantial construction positioned adjacent to the car parking area and hedgerow located behind here. And the land, as you can see to the left-hand side of that building, is where the dog training takes place. This is a view taken from the car parking area looking towards the northwest. Again, as you can see, the area of the land is still quite open. There are very little structures on site apart from the buildings proposed, and the site itself is quite enclosed by existing reed planting and hedgerows along the lane. So this is a view looking back towards the access onto Waldron's Lane, and this is a view looking back towards the access. You can just see the red car there, but this is looking northwards along Waldron's Lane. And as you get further out from the site, you'll see there's a number of hedgerows existing already. And this is a point where we consider the visual impact of the development is considered to be acceptable within this countryside location. This is the view looking back towards the southwest along Waldron's Lane. So you have the site on the right-hand side here. And again, just to sort of emphasise the landscape and the hedgerow planting that's currently along the boundaries of the site. This is the view taken from the lane, again, looking northwards towards the existing building on the site, as well as, I think you can just make out a few people in there currently undertaking the dogs and the training. And this is a view from the south, from an adjacent field, from the existing agricultural access that looks northwards back towards the site. So again, it's not considered that the visual impact of the development would have a significant impact on the countryside character or the setting of the surroundings. In terms of the development itself, we have had an objection from the parish council and residents regarding the increase in vehicular movements that will take place as a result of the development. It is acknowledged that there would be an increase in vehicle movements as a result of the proposal. However, it's not considered on the basis of the information provided by the applicant and the views of the Highway Authority that there will be a significant impact on highway safety. The site itself is a significant distance away from the existing junction with Perry Green that is more populated, and based on the forward visibility along the lane, as well as numerous passing places along Waldron's Lane, that any conflict that would occur within the highway can be suitably managed and would not be of significant highway impact. As we've covered the visual impact in terms of the surroundings, there are a number of buildings along Waldron's Lane, timber clad, as well as of other structures and character. It's not considered development itself in terms of its scale or appearance would it be out of keeping with the context in which it would be situated. And due to the distance of the site, there would be no impact on residential amenity directly through increased noise or overlooking. The number of vehicle movements that have been given as part of the plan for the business, it is considered that it was a reasonable number and would not be a significant disruption to existing residents within Perry Green that use the existing access and highways around the area. In terms of the recommendation, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report. In terms of updates to the report itself, we have been given details of the waste management plan that's listed under condition 7 as recommended. The applicant has provided details of how that would be managed, and they would be looking to employ a professional waste disposal company to take the dog waste away. At the moment, this is currently managed on site, but in the future, this would be through the provision of a large wheelie bin and a smaller caddy bin, which would be used within the site. At the moment, waste is taken away by the owners of the dogs after each session. So at the moment, on the basis of the scale, at the moment, it's considered that it's successfully managed at the present time. But the applicants do have plans to provide a purpose-made plan for the dog waste, and this would be stored in the maintenance shed as proposed. So it would not have a significant impact visually either in terms of the storage facilities around the site. So in terms of the updates to the application, it's considered that condition 7, as recommended, can be reworded to a compliance condition so that the waste management plan and the waste on site be carried out in accordance with and managed in accordance with the details as submitted by the applicants through the additional information provided. So In terms of the recommendation, subject to those that condition tweak, the recommendation is to grant consent. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr Evans. I'd like to call forward the first speaker today, and that's Mr King. Is Mr King here? Thank
Good
you.
afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Mr King, you have 3 minutes, and I will give you a reminder when the 2 minutes is up and you've got 1 minute to go. But just take your time and...
Yes, my name's Paul King. I'm here to represent the residents of Perry Green, all of whom signed a petition to object to this application. Perry Green, give you a bit of geography, you've seen some of the pictures, but Perry Green Lane runs from the junction with Sandford Hill to the junction with Wardlands Lane. It's a windy single carriageway that is about 1 mile in length. It's flanked by deep ditches and averages 3.3 metres in width, with the narrowest part measuring 2.86 metres. Now, my car is 1.8 metres wide, so that's about average. There are only 5 official passing places, which mean people have to reverse their vehicle. There have been a number of vehicles into the ditch when reversing, and on a couple of occasions, police have been called because of altercations, we'll say. Perry Green Lane joins Waldron's Lane, which is similar to Perry Green Lane in description and road dimensions. There are no official passing spaces down Waldron's Lane. Only gateways and a small drove. These are all private property. So technically you shouldn't be taking your vehicle on there. It stretches for about 1 mile across the marsh to the applicant's site and terminates at a footpath. So for the whole length from the junction with Sandford Road right the way down to the site, there is 1 way in and 1 way out. Both carriageways are used by residents, walkers, cyclists, horse riders and agricultural vehicles ranging in size from trucks through tractors to combine harvesters at all times of the day. It is already well used for both business and the majority of leisure. And can I add that the Bridgewater Bolt also uses that lane as well. Both lanes have no road lights and no pavements. From the applicant's site, the expected volume of vehicular movements, i.e. returned there and back, are as follows. On a Wednesday, there'll be 32. On a Thursday, 8. On a Friday, 8. On a Sunday, 50. Saturday could be any number because it's 1-to-1, so it depends upon how many you want to do. That totals in a week. Let's say there's 10, so that totals 108 in total.
You have just under 1 minute left.
Good. This is all extra traffic and double or treble the volume, normal volume at least. These figures could increase at any time. Wembley Parish Council is supportive of our objection and have asked that it be seen in conjunction with another application, 5122 00018. This application could add a similar volume of traffic if passed. Also, he noted that another dog training business, Swiftback, is operating without planning permission in a field in Waters Lane, located half a mile before this application site, therefore generating even more traffic. They are advertising for business on the internet now. Notwithstanding the pollution and noise that this increase in traffic will cause to residents, and it's already been noticed, and it's been noticed further because the lane's been shut off because of piling work. If this application is passed, the chances of a major accident is inevitable.
Well timed, Mr King. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
We don't...
You don't do
can't-
questions.
No. Next speaker is Mr Solomon of Wembley Parish Council, who is joining us remotely, I understand. Is that right?
Can I just confirm that the microphone is on?
Yes, it is. We can hear you. Just let me know when you're ready to start and we'll put the timer on.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I'm ready to start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman, councillors, thank you for your time this afternoon. I am Mike Solomon, Chair of Wembley Parish Council. This retrospective major planning application was a challenging one, which I was thought long and hard about before concluding to object. As like you, we needed to balance the opportunities provided by a new rural business with the impact that this business would have on the daily lives of our residents. You will have heard that the proposed business will bring a significant number of vehicles on weekdays and weekends from all over the southwest. But the only access route to this business is along the very narrow. There are few passing places. The grass verges are already deeply rutted vehicles. It is also a regular route for walkers and cyclists who would also be affected by the. I would just ask you to consider carefully not only the volume of movements quoted, but also the frequency of journeys.
Mr. Solomon, sorry to interrupt you, but the sound quality isn't very good, and I don't know, I think we're missing a bit more than is comfortable at the moment. Is there anything that we can do about that? I'm seeking advice. Have we got Mr. Solomon's submission in writing?
Speaking on telephone on screen.
Can I ask if you're talking through your telephone or on screen?
I'm talking on screen, but I too can hear the echo. So my apologies. May I try to speak?
Yes. Yes, please do.
Would you like me to restart?
We could give a slight extension of time, but yes, if you take it slowly, and then hopefully we'll catch every word.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Please proceed.
Would you like me to read from the beginning?
I think in the interest of fairness, then yes, please. But I wonder if it might help if you put your screen on so that we can see you sort of mouthing the words as well.
My apologies. Apparently, my Teams has turned the video off. It's not my day today. I can see you.
Right. Okay. If we start from the beginning, take it slowly, and we've reset the timer. So let's try again. Thank you.
Thank you. Indulge.
Okay, we're ready.
Good afternoon. This retrospective major planning act is a challenging, which my council thought long and hard about before deciding. As like you, we needed to balance opportunity provided by a new rural business with the impact that this would have on the daily lives of local residents. You will see that the proposed business will bring a significant number of on weekdays and weekends from all over the southwest. But the only access is along Waldron's Lane. Waldron's Lane is now few passing space. Already the verges. It is also a regular route for walkers and cyclists. They would too be affected. I would just ask you, please, to consider carefully not only the volume of movement quoted in this application, but also the frequency of journey to help understand the number of times that local residents are going to meet business traffic, given that each occasion may well involve reversing a length distance before reaching a safe path. And also that your decision today will have long-term effect on the local residents. That is why we as a parent rejected the application. Thank you for your patience and your councillors.
Thank you, Mr. Solomon. That was within the time. We didn't catch every single word, but I think we all got the gist of it. So thank you for that. Can I call now Councillor Caswell, please? I'm ready to start when you are.
Thank you, councillors, for the application, for letting me speak on the application. First of all, I'll make an apology, and that is the fact that I got a huge, great abscess in my mouth. So I haven't been drinking, so if my words are slurred, please bear that in mind. You know, I've looked at this application, and I can't at the moment speak as eloquently as the two speakers have said tonight. The traffic situation along Waldrums Lane and from Perry Green is absolutely diabolical. As a councillor, I have been called to that road on many occasions, and one resulted in one particular resident waving an iron bar at me, which the police recorded. There are passing places where you cannot actually, if there's two vehicles and one is in this, I say, illegal parking space, you cannot get through still. One farmer to get from Waldrums Lane or that area around to his fields in Sandford Corner has to do a 4-mile detour because he can't get through because of cars coming the other way, vehicles coming the other way. When we had the incident at Sandford Corner with the bus a few months ago, you may remember, and also when the man was run over by the Shell garage, traffic automatically run through Wendon, which got blocked. So they turned down Perry Green. The local people just turned down Perry Green. It was one long traffic queue because there was nowhere to pass each other, nowhere to do anything. I got down there and it was absolutely mayhem. I've come in today and along Quantop Road there are temporary traffic lights and people again are using that area. So that is the reason I registered my objection. I ask you as responsible councillors to please look at that again. I know Highways have actually said that they are content, but I'm not content. The residents aren't content. So please look at this again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Caswell. And the final speaker for this application is Mr. Mark Watkins, please.
We're joined on this one, or one bit first.
Yeah, okay.
Agree with Steve.
And 3 minutes between them. Yes, it is.
You'll have 3 minutes between.
Yes, yes, we were aware.
So did you want another chair up?
If you don't mind. Thank you very much.
Hello. I thought you might find it helpful if I give you a little bit of background. I'm Sue Watkins and I'm a gun dog trainer, and I'd like just to take a minute to explain a little about what I do along with the benefit that it offers. I work predominantly with gun dog breeds, helping their owners to train, understand and manage their dogs, all of whom are designed to work within the rural environment. Some owners will not want to take their, some dog owners will want to take their dogs into the shooting field, others into competition, and lastly, some have pets with little or no outlet for their natural needs. This is an ever-growing problem with the number of working dogs being in pet homes. For a large number of these dogs and owners, the rural life we benefit from in our area can be a huge challenge and potentially problematic. Left untrained and managed, these dogs will chase and do untold damage to a wide variety of wildlife and stock, causing trauma, upset, as well as expense to all those involved. As a gun dog trainer, I help owners to train their dogs and understand and using positive science-based training methods. This allows owners to gain an understanding of their dog's needs, channels, and give them their dogs a safe, natural outlet, which in turn allows both dogs and owners to enjoy our surrounding countryside in a safe and appropriate way, with stock and wildlife being left undisturbed and safe. In order to achieve these training needs to be done in a natural environment where dogs and owners can learn with confidence, safety and security. There is a shortage of trainers like me. As a result, owners travel from all over South West and Wales for the services I offer. In turn, this benefits the local rural economy, with clients staying in the area and spending their money.
Obviously, the traffic numbers I heard this morning actually vary from those that we supplied through to LIB and Fordham Parish Council. They're all based off what we've been doing the last 16 months on the site. Basically, it's closed Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday through to Saturday is a maximum of 9 cars a day. That's 18 movements. You generally have one group, 6 maximum, then there's 3 one-to-ones. Now, the biggest group is on the Sunday, which we're very cautious and aware of, as being the most day that everybody that are working can attend. We do have 4 classes there at 24 people, that's 48 movements. Currently, no one really has expressed any concerns or issues driving down the lane or met anybody because of those limited numbers, and we also space the classes a half-hour apart to make sure that the movements, they don't hit each other's traffic. But it is a very limited number of cars that are moving up and down the traffic. And I think even the comments from some of the Wendon and Peregrine have said, you know, they're happy with 10 movements a day, and that's easy. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to take the seat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillors. Oh, sorry, before we go on to councillors, Mr. Evans, there were some, obviously highways issues raised there. Is there anything you'd like to sort of respond to those?
Yeah, sure. Just in line with what the applicants were saying there, we have tried to set out broadly what the movements are in the residential amenity section. Maybe it should have been in the highway section in retrospect, but we have tried to illustrate what a typical day would be for the business itself. I mean, I can share with members images I've taken of Waldron's Lane itself, if that would be useful. So if we plot that into there. So, bear with me a second. So this was taken on Friday, just before the bank holiday weekend. So what I've done is I've gone up Waldron's Lane from south to north, just illustrating the sort of the type of makeup that the lane itself has. So on the left-hand side here, I think we have a livery business, which is operating just inside of the Waldron's Lane junction off of Perry Green there. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, the road is narrow, and as the resident had alluded to, the number of parking places are, in terms of official ones, are limited. But the makeup of the road is such that there is, in our opinion, and the Highways Authority opinion as well, that there is sufficient visibility going forward that if you do have 2 cars meeting, and as the applicant said, they've tried to avoid that conflict by staggering the lessons and providing a 30-minute window where people can leave the site and obviously other people can arrive. But just to show that there are a number of existing openings into Waldron's Lane, which show that there is a possibility of 2 cars passing. So obviously this is an access here, but we also have an agricultural access there that naturally widens the road. We have a passing place there, which is a little bit more narrow, but again, just to emphasise the character of the lane itself, this is going out further now from or away from the houses and the businesses more into the open territory of the sites and the surroundings. So yeah, I mean, we've got quite a bit area of hard standing there. Again, not ideal, but this just shows the sort of, if there is a sort of a turning, you do have a sort of passing place there. Again, this is all sort of lowered. I mean, it's not ideal again, but you do have these sort of agricultural access to make a natural sort of passing area. This is, yeah, a bit of a wider section here. More agricultural access. So just to sort of give members a bit of a feel of what Waldron's Lane is like, and then beyond this, you're coming into the application site itself. This is just a view taken of the junction onto the Perry Green area. So you have residential properties going in this direction here, and you'll meet some more sporadic properties going to the left towards the Wendon area. But again, the visibility onto the actual main highway network, which links with Sanford Hill and Wendon and Chiltern Trinity in this direction, just sort of emphasise the sort of width and the makeup of the highway there. So yeah, just to sort of give them a bit more of a picture of what it looks like at the moment.
Thank you, Mr Evans. Councillor Hendry. Councillor Hendry.
Okay, thank you. Without going into too much detail about the actual planning application itself at the moment, as with these things, very, very often the main gripe is about traffic movement. I understand that totally, get where they're coming from. The two applicants just spoke there at great length and explained in much detail the figures they themselves have calculated. And I've got no reason to believe that they would come up here and lie about it. They've obviously gone into detail, they've looked at it and brought the figures forward to us. When highways are okay with this type of thing, and they obviously are, I use that as a springboard for this type of application to go from. Without again going to the application, about 2 years ago, we had a similar kind of thing at Badgeworth, you may remember, where somebody wanted to make a house into a little safe haven for children. And the exact same problem came up about traffic and all the complaints with that. I parked my car there for 15 minutes as a drive-by, and there wasn't one car came past. Now I know you can't compare it directly, it's two different areas, but all that said and done, at this moment in time, I don't actually have a problem with this. I'll wait to hear what you've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hendry. Are there any other comments? Councillor Bott.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's almost like an outside passing it around. My main concerns are the evaluation of the traffic midweek is fine, but when it comes to the Sundays, it's just said it's a busy day. On a Sunday, it's a very busy area because there is a lot of equestrian traffic and cyclists out with families out and about enjoying it. The Sunday is obviously the day forward. And Mr. Evans is pointing out that a lot of the passing areas that they're referring to are actually the grass verge. And if you look at the photos that you've shown, they're full of water anyway. Even 4x4 is going to be sat in there for a little while and probably block the lane. Those are my concerns at the moment, is purely on traffic. The business concept and everything else is great, but I don't think there's enough information, especially on the Sunday. And the thought that we're thinking about using the grass verges to get past is just going to turn that into a quagmire, and it's bad enough now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I respect the officers and what they've said, but I have to say, when a ward member comes in who should know the area, I think, better than anyone, and expresses this issue about traffic, which, let's be honest, traffic is the biggest burden now to us all. And I'm very, very worried that whilst business is got to be greeted well, of course it has, but I do think we're actually adding to an already big problem, and I'm major concerned. I hear what County is saying, that it's acceptable, but what's acceptable isn't always necessarily the correct way. So I'm really concerned about this. Thank you.
just a reminder that it's all on Somerset Council now and not, we shouldn't refer to county.
Oh, I beg your pardon, I do apologise, was it something?
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Similar concern, but if I could just ask maybe if Mr. Evans could give us a little more information in terms of highways views, particularly in relation to the passing points. It says in the report, no objections, but I just wonder if they've taken into account and have explicitly raised the issue of the passing bays and how they can cope, and whether there's any need for any further passing bays to be created.
In terms of the views from highways, in line with what the parish council said, we did go back to them and check to make sure that they were happy with what they had said initially within the application's response. The comments that they provided us were mainly to do with the access onto Waldron's Lane itself, but we did highlight the fact that there were these concerns raised by the parish council and residents about the actual suitability of the access itself. They did confirm they didn't have anything further to add, so it was difficult for us to really sort of drill down into that. And to be honest with you, it was an opportunity for them to come back and say, okay, well, let's reevaluate. But in this case, they considered that the application itself presented enough information that they were content with what had actually been provided, and that going forward, that the application itself wouldn't provide any sort of significant highways impact. So hence our recommendation for you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Any more? Councillor Bruce.
Thank you. I just wondered if there's any more information being submitted about the development of the business, because at the moment highways have given an opinion based on current expected movements, the current situation, but there's comments from parish council about the fact that there's no information about how the business might develop. If we're happy to approve it, for example, today based on the current movements, that's one thing, but if it's very different in a few years' time, that's already been approved. So forgive me because I'm new to the planning committee, so I don't quite know how everything works, but thank you.
In terms of the application, is partly retrospective and partly proposal. So we have a situation where the land is being used for the proposal we have in front of us today. The Highway Authority looked at the proposal that would be going forward. So we are assessing the application as if it was in its finished form. So while it's been moved on slightly from being a pure proposal to half retrospective, half, or however you want to view it, the application that we're looking at today is the whole picture. So in terms of what Highways looked at, they were looking at the proposal as in its entire form. So in terms of what they had said, they didn't consider there to be a severe impact on the local highway network based on the projected vehicle movements that would be achieved if the application use was at its full capacity. So what we've set out in the report today is the anticipated movements that if every session was filled, we would be looking at 18 movements on a given day between Wednesday to Friday, and then Sunday being the largest session, being the 48 movements that's been set out within the report. So that's what we'd be looking at in terms of the business model now. If there are any sort of advancements in the future, then obviously we need to assess that at any given time. But at the moment, what we're looking at is the proposal as a whole.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We cannot take any more comments. You have your 3 minutes, and let's making the most of those. Thank you, Mr. Noon. Did you want to? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, in terms of, you're right, and it's a good point, Hilary, in terms of the traffic generations and the business model is before us at the moment, we have specific models and specific traffic generations linked with the type and nature of the classes that they're doing. If members were satisfied with the traffic generation that's been put before that have been put before the Highway Authority and the Highway Authority are happy with, if members are satisfied with that, we could add a condition on to be prescriptive in terms of the nature of the sessions and the number of the sessions to make sure those figures aren't breached, so it doesn't go uncontrollable. That condition could then be sought to be varied at a later point, should the applicant wish to do so, in terms of if the business model evolves from there on in. But the number that we've got and the number that's been assessed is based on the number and nature of the businesses and classes that they're currently running, and we've assessed them at full capacity. So we could include a condition to say, you know, the classes shall not exceed the detail that we've been submitted, assessed and determined as acceptable, if members weren't comfortable with that approach. And then if the business model evolved at a later point and they wanted to run things slightly differently, and generate different traffic generation figures from that, they can always submit to vary that condition. So it's, it sets a boundary for all parties.
Thank you. Did you want to
In that case, if it's appropriate, I think I'd like to recommend that condition's added. I'm happy with the fact that highways have assessed it now and they believe that with the current frequency proposed, they're happy with it. But I would like to have a condition that that's not breached or exceeded to a significant extent.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. So are you proposing the officers recommended with that condition attached? Just so that I'm clear.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Just another point of clarification, please. We're quoted at 48 movements a day. Can you just confirm that that's 48 movements in total, or is it 48 movements in, then 48 movements out?
It's in total, so it would represent the number of vehicles that would be expected. So I think the applicant alluded to 9 being on a Wednesday or Thursday, so that's the 18 in total, to and back, arriving and leaving. So the same with that, 48, yeah, is a total.
So just to be clear, sorry, Councillor Hendry and then Councillor Bradford.
Councillor Bruce to speak first, because I think he was to speak.
Did you need to come back, Councillor Bruce? Yeah. No? Okay, thank you.
That's great. I'm happy to second Councillor Bruce, because I think you did propose to grant permission. Is that correct? No. I've heard what everything has to say. I've read the paperwork. Quite happy with everything. I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford first and then Councillor Bolt. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's not an easy one to start a new regime off, really, is it? Really. It's like all diversification in the countryside. There's things for and things against. When you look at all everything today, then one thing balances the other out. I must say those pictures of the lane, which must have been taken in the last 3 or 4 months, which is a particularly bad period of time. I'm sure if they were taken probably through later May, June, July, August, they wouldn't look it near like they look at the moment. And that would show a bit more like that. We have a councillor who come here and spoke against it today, and it's a very, very difficult one. But I think weighing it all up, you must take the pluses. There's lots of dogs walking all over the place now. I live in a village, and dogs. People got 3 or 4, not 1 anymore, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes these places can be of benefit. I might have my facts wrong there, but I think sometimes, and regarding the vehicle passes, Monday and Tuesday is going to be closed. So that leaves Wednesday, Thursday, possibly Friday, a little bit of business. It's like our village with the diversification that's gone on. Saturday and Sunday, that's when you get the people in. Well, people adjust to that. And one thing I'm going to suggest perhaps, that some decent pull-ins are made on Waldron's Lane. And when things do happen, and we shall have these ditches, probably all part of the planning. And decent pull-ins, not muddy areas, but nice stoned out areas.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I still, well, I'm undecided, really, I'm a real hobber, didn't like me really, and I hate abstaining. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bradford. Councillor Bolt.
Thank you. With regards to that condition you're putting on, I've just been checking that I've read all the other conditions okay. Is it possible that if they wish to open on the Monday, Tuesday, that can be conditioned that they would have to come back? Because obviously the Monday, Tuesday additional would be further generation.
Yeah, I mean, as set out in the report at the moment, it's specified to be operating 5 days a week with one-to-one training and group sessions, typically only 18 movements, should all spaces be filled on Wednesday to Friday, with Saturday restricted to one-to-one sessions and Sunday with the larger movements, which is up to 48. So yeah, in terms of the wording of the condition would reflect the numbers that we've got, because that's the numbers that have been assessed and deemed acceptable by the Highway Authority. So if members were satisfied with that, it would be limited to 5 days a week within those numbers. And then should that change, so should the number of days increase or should the vehicle numbers increase beyond that, then it will be a section 73, so they'd have to come in to vary that condition.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So just to be clear, the condition we're adding is to include in the conditions the paragraph in the report regarding the sort of numbers and making that a maximum number.
Yeah, so I would suggest the wording, the precise wording to be agreed with the chair and vice chair, but effectively it will limit the use of the site as per that paragraph. And also if people are getting close to voting, if we can please remember the amendments that were proposed as well to condition 7 in terms of compliance.
Okay, so we have sorry, Councillor Redmond.
Forgive me, Chair, I was trying to keep out of this one, but I'm beginning to get a bit confused. My concern is that by putting a limitation on it, that we're limiting to maybe exemptions. I'm not sure whether the business may plan for a summer fair or a summer competition or something like that. Are we saying that that will not be allowed under this condition?
If I could answer that one, we did specifically think about that issue. There is a condition number 5 that is limited. We're suggesting limiting it to dog walking or training area, or for agriculture, obviously, and not for any other use, including temporary uses. So we were alive to that possibility. That could be a dog festival or something. So we look to control that. In terms of other things that we look to control there, that we've sort of limited temporary uses of siting of caravans, that sort of thing. And then with the condition that's been suggested, I think we need to be clear on that one. That will limit. Are we seeking through that to limit the number of movements, the number of dogs, or the number of training sessions? Because it's all a bit. Because there's quite a lot in that paragraph. So I think we just need to be clear on that. So the condition drafting is exactly what members want.
My understanding is it's the number of movements that is the issue here, not the number of dogs or the number of people in the car. It's the number of traffic movements. So I am moving forward to propose the. I'm sorry, Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. That was I only wanted to come in because that was the clarification I was seeking, because we're making quite a big decision here in relation to the business. I want to be clear that we're being clear on what it's the maximum number of vehicle movements that is the point that we're limiting, because obviously there may be a number of opportunities they could get vehicle sharing and stuff like that. So that's the bit that I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on. So it's purely with the exception of the exemptions already there, the limitations already. It's the number of vehicle movements per day.
Correct. Yes. Okay. If there's no more debate, I will propose a recommendation to grant permission, subject to the update on condition 7 about waste management and an additional condition around restricting the traffic movements as per the number in the report. So if everybody, all in favour, please show. Those against?
1, 2, 3 against.
And I think that's everybody. That's everybody. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right.
So that's carried.
So that is carried. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to the second application, which is regarding 65 Brent Street, Brent Knoll. If I could just ask Ms. Parsons to introduce the report, please. Is she here? Is it? Can we? Thank you. Sorry, that's all right. Okay, Get yourself ready. I'm ready to. Yes. But if you'd like to take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for keeping you waiting. This is a planning application for the erection of the first floor extension, together with two-story extension to the northeast and southwest elevations, and the formation of a new vehicular access. It's located within Brent Knoll off Brent Street. As you can see, it's one of a row of some semi-detached, some detached properties which run alongside both sides of the street. And the site itself is a bungalow to the northwest. There's another bungalow, and to the south there is a pair of houses. And the next slide will show a photograph front on of the existing bungalow. And then this is looking adjacent to the southeast. You can see it's a pair of houses, and again the same elevation but looking further down the road than the street scene. And this one is the bungalow adjacent on the other side. And the next photograph is showing directly between the two properties, the two bungalows, showing the existing garage that belongs to the applicant and the boundary. It is a row of houses and the street scene further along. Now this shows the proposed layout. A little bit small, I'm afraid. The existing garage is to remain in place, and the existing car parking space adjacent to the southeast of the existing property is to remain. There will be a new vehicular access formed along here, and the existing vehicular access, the other one, would remain. Now, this is the existing bungalow. As you can see, two-bed bungalow with a garage set back off the road, quite close to the boundary, and it's proposed to build above the same footprint, but to extend a little bit at the rear. And sorry, this is and to extend a little bit at the front, and to keep the garage in the same location. The elevations indicate the resultant development, showing a house basically. Would be finished in render with slate tiles, and there would be a natural stone feature on the front gable, with the rear having timber treatment. The middle picture, the middle front elevation there, shows the existing garage that would be clad. That's to be clad at the front in stone. It shows the relationship of the proposed house and the property adjacent, as well as the bungalow adjacent on the other side. Now, in terms of the impact on visual amenity, as you can see from the photographs, within the street scene, there are a number of varying properties ranging from bungalows to houses of different materials and different ages and different designs. Clearly, the proposal will alter the existing visual impact of the existing property, because it will be turning it in effect into a house. However, it's considered it would fit comfortably between the existing bungalow on one side and the pair of houses on the other side. And in terms of the materials, the use of the natural stone, there is also a variety of different materials within the street scene along there. But further along towards the centre of Brent Knoll, there is some use of natural stone that forms some boundaries of property. And in terms of its visual impact, it's not considered that it would have an adverse impact on the character of the area or the existing bungalow. In terms of the impact on residential amenity, the site sits between two other properties. The development would not result in the building being closer to either of the properties either side. The height of the ridge would be raised by 2.1 metres, resulting in a ridge height of 7.15 metres. And this would be 1.8 metres above the ridge of the nearest dwelling, which is the bungalow adjacent. considered that the extensions that are shown that are proposed would not cause any undue harm in terms of amenities to neighbouring properties, in terms of overlooking loss of light or visual domination. The first floor windows at the rear within the projecting gable section, which serves a bedroom, they are shown to be upscale glazed and they can be conditioned to be retained as such. And so there won't be any adverse impact on neighbouring property. In terms of highway issues, the existing dwelling would have an additional bedroom as well as an office study. There would be at least enough space to park 4 vehicles off the highway. And the recommendation is to grant consent.
Thank you, Ms Parsons. We have one speaker on this item, and that is Mr Townsend of Brent Knoll Parish Council. Are you in the room, Mr Parsons? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, just say when you're ready and we'll press the button.
I'm ready, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm afraid Brent Knoll Parish Council disagrees with your planning officer. 65 Brent Street sits adjacent to a pair of semi-detached red brick Victorian houses, and opposite Knoll Cottage and number 55. All these dwellings are older historical properties of Brent Knoll. The proposal is to replace an old bungalow with a new first floor area and a modern out of character fascia. Brent Knoll Parish Council decided unanimously that this development did not fit in with the existing properties. It is an overdevelopment and that it would have a detrimental impact in terms of visual amenity in accordance with policy D2 of the local plan. Our second concern related to the visual impact of the proposed design, particularly in relation to first floor glazed windows situated above the new entrance. These are large windows, out of character, and do not fit in with the visual amenity, and hence does not comply with D2 or D25 of the local plan. When Brent Knoll Parish Council dealt with the development of 2 Brent Street, we asked the architect to incorporate features that are found within existing properties within the village. We similarly would expect that any further developments would take this into consideration. This has not been done with the proposed development at 65, and we would request that this development is refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr Parsons, is there anything you'd like to, there were issues raised about the design. Is there anything you'd like to come back to us?
No, I need to reiterate that because due to there being a variety of design and character of property within the area, it's considered that this wouldn't look out of place. It will add interest to the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Hendry?
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you strip this back to a plot of land, no bungalow at all, just a vacant plot of land, then it would be classed as an infill development. Given there's a very big house to the one side of it, then the actual size, the bulk of the house is not out of place. However, the parish council do have a point. The actual aesthetics of the place is actually out of character, as I see it just now with Brent Street. I don't have a problem with the size of the house, but I do have a little bit of a problem with the facade just as it is, because I don't think it's in keeping, as the parish council pointed out, with everything else in the road. By the actual size of the house and the development, I don't have a problem with, but with the facade at the front, I do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I actually too also, I always think it's a real shame when bungalows have to be changed. Anyway, personal view, not enough bungalows in the world for a lot of people, and then we go up and change. But I do think this is it is a visual impact on the design. It does look out of character, and I think it's a great shame because it's nothing's wrong with the design. I just don't think it's in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Thank you. I have a similar view to the previous 2 speakers. The comment from the case officer of sort of there are things like this somewhere else in the village, almost that therefore anything goes. And I don't think in this particular area, when you saw the pictures, There are modest cottages across the road. There are Victorian semi-detached former school house previously. So the character is simple in that area. And I think the front feature on that particular property does just stand out, particularly with it being then blue lias in certain places is great, but this isn't in character there. And so I would struggle to support this in terms of character and the impact on the street scene. But I'm sure a different design could certainly work in that location.
Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was waiting for the local knowledge. You'll probably hear more than once in the next 3 or 4 years that local knowledge is paramount. Probably looks at it 3 or 4 times every day, and that's very important. I don't know where the place is. Jill Slogan's got a point as well regarding bungalows. I'll finish. Microphone's playing that. That's it. Right. Right.
Okay, well, thank you. Mr. Green.
I'm just going to be the word of caution in everyone's ear today, sorry. In terms of policy D2, I think the comments that I've heard back so far from members is concern that it's out of keeping. So policy D2 says we will support sort of delivery of buildings, places and spaces that are attractive and safe, accessible for all, enjoyable to use, conveniently and socially interactive, environments to encourage healthy lifestyles, conducive to walking and cycling, designed with flair, imagination, style and innovation, and responsive to and reinforce local context, character, scale and distinctiveness of place. So I think what I'm hearing back from members is concern on the latter point. Given the bullet point above is also part of the same policy, what I would be asking members to think about is what degree of harm is there as a result of the materials, of the layout, of the character. And there is a variety of different styles and materials and shapes and sizes of properties up and down the road. I just, if we do get to a point where, it is a refusal on design grounds, I need to understand from a defence position what I would be fighting for in the case of an appeal. So if members can just reflect on that a little bit, please.
Before I introduce any other speakers, I've just been informed that there is another speaker on this application, and it is the applicant, Mr. Taylor. If you could just give details of who has registered to speak.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. There's an error on my part. The applicant's agent, Mr. Paul Martin, has registered to speak, and that has been confirmed. Unfortunately, it's just been overlooked by myself at the moment, so I apologise for that. So perhaps Mr. Martin would like to come forward, Chair.
Yes, please.
Chair, could I just ask a question before Mr. Martin does that?
Yeah.
Wearing a Brentnell Parish Council hat, I am currently working with the agent on another project in the village. Does that therefore mean I have to do a personal interest or anything greater than that? I just need to have clarity because I wasn't aware that obviously Mr. Martin was due to speak, so that's the first I've heard of it.
Councillor Filmer, if you have a close association with Mr. Martin, then I would suggest that you will be a NRI, but because you have a close association, you will have to leave the room.
If that's the legal advice on social, I should take that as stand work. The association I have is through my role as parish councillor, but I'm happy to I'll take that advice.
I think it's taking the legal advice.
Exactly.
Ms. Lehman, could you just explain MRI? Because there's a lot of people in the room which won't know what that means.
Sorry, so an NRI is a non-registrable interest. So where a matter arises at a meeting which directly relates to your financial interest or well-being, or a financial interest or well-being of a relative or close associate, which a business partner or somebody you conduct business with can be a close associate, you may declare and then you leave the room. I understand, Councillor Filmer, that you said it's a business a business association with you as a parish councillor, and it's not a personal association. I'm sorry, I did miss that. So I actually think it's just, if it doesn't affect you any greater than any of the constituents in the area as a whole, then you would be able to stay and join into the debate. If it does affect you greater than the constituents as a whole within the area, then you will have to leave the room. I know this is rather complex, but we need to be clear as to what the relationship actually is.
Sorry, Chair. The relationship is I'm a parish councillor. The parish councillor is currently working with the agent on a project to build a property in the parish. And that's the relationship we have through my membership of the parish council. The parish council then has a relationship with the agent.
Then my advice would be, Chair, that Councillor Filmer can stay in the room and join in the event.
Thank you. We've clarified that. Before we go any further, I hear some discussions going on. Can I just say that the murmurings reverberate around the room, and if there are any discussions to be had, can they be publicly through the chair, please? Thank you. So now I have invite Mr. Townsend. No, sorry, Mr. Martin. I'm so sorry, to the chair for 3 minutes.
And to further clarify, Madam Chairman, I'm no relation to your Vice Chair, Matt Martin, although he does share the same name as my son.
Right, when you're ready, we will start the timer.
Thank you, Chair, and committee members for eventually allowing me to speak in support of my client's application. Shanta has already explained the proposals in detail, and as an experienced officer, I trust you will follow her recommendation and approve this application. The Parish Council has objected on the grounds that it is overdevelopment and not in keeping with the neighbouring street scene. The existing bungalow occupies a larger than average plot and is separated from the neighbouring properties by distances of 9 and 6 metres. The bungalow, as you've heard, is to be enlarged by the addition of a first floor storey that is the same area as its footprint. The 2 projecting bays on the front and rear elevations are modest in size and add only 7 square metres to the footprint area. The front bay is to be constructed of natural blue glass stone to create an interesting feature to the front elevation and to break up the rendered areas. It is a common architectural feature that can be found on other properties in Brent Street where reconstructed stone has been used for similar effect. It's not unusual for this to be found in the village. By accommodating the first floor bedrooms within the roof space, we have managed to reduce the ridge height to 760 millimetres below the roof line of the neighbouring red brick house and 1.8 metres higher than the neighbouring bungalow to ensure that it is not overbearing or results in the loss of daylight to the neighbouring properties. There is a mix of different architectural styles and materials in the vicinity of the site and in Brent Street itself. As you've heard, there are traditional cottages, brick houses, rendered bungalows and chalet bungalows. So the proposed design reflects the diverse character of the village whilst introducing a more contemporary approach. As Shanta has already explained, there's no overlooking or loss of privacy to neighbouring properties, and the proposals clearly comply with the council's parking standards. Members, in conclusion, there is no valid reason why this application should not be approved, and I commend it to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, and apologise again for the
We got there in the end.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we started the debate. Councillor Hendry.
Okay, I'll come back again. I said already, and I stand by it, the actual size of the house, I don't have a problem with. It is a bit of an infill if you want to look at it that way, but I can't support it in the current form with the front facade as it is. It's too much for that particular street and the surrounding properties and the ones across the road from it. If anybody wants to put forward a proposal to grant permission, that's fine, but if I'm in on this, I would have to have some kind of condition because I cannot accept the front as it is with the front facade. I can't go along with that. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hendry. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to say that I think this is against policy D2. I think it doesn't fit in with the street scene. It is a much more contemporary design, and I think it's important with a village to ensure that you have a bit of sensitivity. And I don't think lovely design probably somewhere else. Don't get me wrong, but not on the street scene. I cannot agree with this one. Sorry.
Councillor Filmer.
Again, agree with the previous comments. I mean, in terms of Mrs. DeVries requesting why, I think if you look at almost all of the other properties in that section of the village, they are simple and modest in character. And I think that it is that front elevation that causes this the big problem. Having a front elevation which stands out and then picked out in blue lights against everything else, I think it will stand out like a sore thumb in an unfortunate way. So that would why I would think that a simpler design would work potentially. But if you're looking for a steer as to why I've got concerns, that's why this is the reason.
Thank you. Councillor Grant and then Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chairman. Like my fellow councillors, I too have a problem with the design and the street scene on this. I just don't think it's the right design for this particular area. I know this area relatively well. So I would be hard pushed to support this application as it stands. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Redmond.
Some clarification in the first instance. Thank you. That was I was going to ask if there are any pictures of the area. I believe that's the properties directly in front of the proposed site. Is that blue? Okay, so I'm having some concerns and trying to understand what the issue is in relation to I'm confused, Chair, I'm sorry. What is the impact that this new building, as far as I can see it, forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, colleagues across the room, there's a bit of and I will bring it down to my lowest common denominator level, if you don't mind, Chair. It appears to me that the issue is a bit that's sticking out in the middle. And how is that something that's an issue? I'm willing to, I'm not saying I've got a decision, but in the first instance, there's a blue building right opposite the one we're talking about. And the second issue is the major concern so far. There's no issue about the size that I create. It's just a bit that's being stuck on the front and a bit that's being stuck on the back that's the issue.
Mr. Freeze.
So again, in terms of the debate, there is a lot of discussion about the blue limestone feature that's in the middle. That's a natural blue stone, which is usually a high quality material that we would love to get into development. But if there are concerns that it's not particularly characteristic of this area, if it was a case of switching out materials, would that be sufficient? Just aware we should be covering stuff by conditions where we can. So if it was switched out for red brick, would that address members' concerns in terms of the change of materials? The main bulk of the building is rendered, and there are examples of properties that are rendered immediately opposite the site and slightly further up and slightly further down from the site. So I would be uncomfortable if we were pursuing a refusal for a rendered property that's quite well spaced from the boundaries on sort of render being material. If it's the blue lias that's out of keeping, that could be controlled by condition if that would address members' concern. Or is it the gable feature on the front and the dormer style windows that are members' concern? I think it's just, I'm quite keen to actually be aware as to what the actual problem is with the building. So if we do end up defending an appeal, we know what we're defending against. Thank you.
Can I just take, Councillor Murphy hasn't spoken yet, and then Councillor Martin, and then I will go back to.
I just wanted to come back on that point, Chair. It's only very quick.
Quick, yes.
Thank you. That was the clarification I was seeking.
If I go to this side first, because Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. I've lived in this area for about 40 years and wandering around
you know, this particular village. There's so much diversity in this village. And there's also a great number of mansions and large houses, houses with front porches. The only thing that is sticking out possibly is the Blue Lias, which looks a little different. But I think if we wandered through Brent Knoll, I mean, up to the very end where there are new housing schemes, all along the main road, which is, it's so different. It changes every single house. It's different. It's so diverse, that village. I mean, it does have a reputation of being quite what can you say, a reserved village. But it's not as reserved as made out. It's actually quite dynamic in its buildings. So I would say, personally, I would vote for it. If there is any opportunity to discuss further, I would say there's probably, according to the architect who's just spoken, there's quite a few examples of Blue Lias in the village. I haven't seen much of Blue Lias, but I would say it wouldn't make any much difference. And also the way they've done the front, I think, is rather attractive. It's not attractive at all. It's quite normal and it's not unusual. I mean, I assure you, if you wander through Brent Knoll, you would see front porches, front erections. It's just the way it is. I would say it's not diverse at all.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment back again on policy D2. We keep going back to this same policy. And as Dawn mentioned earlier, points 7 and 8, I think they are, 7 and 8 are in D2. They do seem to sort of counteract each other, but I wanted to maybe offer a word of caution in that the idea of a building being in keeping with its surroundings, I think, could be taken to the nth degree. And that might be looking at situations like building a Tesco's Metro in the middle of a village, you know, or something that's so far out of the ordinary that one wouldn't, you know, one would shy away from such a thing. I don't think we can look at the idea of not being or not being in keeping because we don't particularly like a particular feature of a property. We always need to consider the idea of material considerations. That's our guiding light. And personal preference comes after that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you. I think this is not about personal preference. This is about protecting a village scene, protecting a street scene, protecting the visual amenity of the people around. And the design, as I've said, is not wrong. It's just, I think it's not right in that street scene. So I think it is too contemporary for that street scene. So maybe we could add D25 to say protecting residential amenity. But it's just something that you feel is right. And it's not about personal, it's just about what's right for the street scene.
Thank you, Councillor Slocum. Are there any other comments at this point? And I will be looking for a recommendation shortly. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. The comment from Case Officer John DeFries about having to move this onto red brick, face brick, that actually moves the goalpost completely because it changed the whole appearance and it might match in with everything else on that street. So I hadn't actually thought about that until it was pointed out. That does move the goalpost and change things in my eyes. I've listened to what everybody said, the whole debate. I've kind of moved my stance a little bit, I have to be honest, hearing everybody else's comments. So at this moment, I would propose to grant permission, however, add a condition to change that to red brick, just because it would suit that particular street scene where it is. If you continue with the blue, then no, but if you can add the condition, then I'd say, okay, grant permission, I propose that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hendry. I have to confess, I'm slightly confused about which colour is changing where. Could we have some, if you could talk us through the suggestion you made and Councillor Hendry's proposal, I would be very grateful. Before you do that, Councillor Filmer, do you want to add anything at this point?
Can I just raise a slight concern in my mind? That to me, the issue is the gable and the fact that it as part the Blue Lias against render picks out the gable and makes even more of a feature. If you put red brick with render behind it, it's going to have exactly the same thing of picking out that feature and making it the dominant thing on the front of that building. it's the gable for me that is the issue in terms of the character. If you look at those other cottages and everything else, it is very simple and small, and the gable is what screams. So if it were to be made into red brick, for me, it's as bad as it is if it's blue lights. If it was rendered, potentially that absorbs it into the building. I still don't like the gable, but render would be less of a problem than something that picks it out as a feature and stamps it on the front of the building.
Okay, so in terms of the red brick render mix, just on the bungalow next door, there is some red brick making up the corner detail of the rendered bungalow. So in terms of blending in or picking up characteristics of the street scene, that was why my suggestion was to go with red brick, but understand Councillor Filmer's point completely in terms of the concern for him is the gable. If we can go back to the elevation, please, again, Shanto. So the debate has moved, so far as I'm aware, in terms of if you're looking at the top middle picture, that shows the front elevation. So that gable element right in the middle, which has got the porch and the full length glazing on it, was shown to be blue lias stone. The agent is happy to accept a condition to require it to be red brick, and we could require samples to be submitted so that we can check the red brick colouring in terms of matching it in with the colour of the surrounding area, if members were more agreeable to that. I'm saying that understanding, Councillor Filmer, that for you it's an issue with the gable and the proportions of the gable being out of keeping, and then the sort of the distinction between the rendered background and the red gabled element. So it's for members. The applicant is quite happy to take in condition if members want to go down that route, but I will leave it for members to continue to debate.
Because we are effectively changing an element of the design, and that's the area of concern, isn't it? I'm just cautious that we need to be absolutely clear, don't we? Why we're refusing, so that when it is the design comes back again, that everybody's absolutely clear about what they've agreed. I'm just throwing it out there as well. Sometimes when discussions like this happen, it seems like the best thing is, if it isn't going to get committee support, we have to be very clear why, but does the applicant have another go at resubmitting?
Thank you. The direction I was suggesting would be a condition, so that it is conditioned to go from blue lias to red brick, and that would enable members to support the application if they wanted to progress down that route. So that would be through this application as a support, subject to a condition to change the materials. If there are more concerns than just the materials, and it's the overall contemporary approach and the form of the dwelling, then obviously that's a recommendation for refusal on design grounds. So members would have to vote on that respectively. But I don't think there's been a resolution yet. No. But in terms of compromise to the resolution that's put before members, we can condition the exchange of materials on the front from blue lias to red. So that's in the members' hands.
Okay, can I just take Councillor Redmond and then Councillor Grimes?
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, this is my first proper planning meeting. Not that I've done the training, I'm aware where I am. I'm just trying to be careful with my words, make sure that I don't. If in the first instance we're talking about change to red brick, and you give it in your response, you gave an indication that part of the next door building was red brick. And if I just look at the plan, the whole of the next door building is red brick. Yeah. So it's not picking out elements of it. It will be in keeping with the colours and of one part of it. But as I made reference to earlier, it appears to me that the house opposite is blue as well. So there are different there. I'm keen to. I think I would be willing to support the application. However, for an attempt to move on, I would support Councillor Hendry's proposal if the developer is in and in agreement with the red brick proposal, then I'm happy to second the proposal and move forward in that way. Then that would mean that the red brick wouldn't be the blue, and it would be a way forward. So I would be seconding Councillor Hendry's proposal, Chair.
Thank you. So, Councillor Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think the blue lights for me was the main issue. The brick, I think, is slightly better. My personal opinion is if the whole thing was rendered, it would look the same as the properties opposite. They're rendered. It wouldn't detract from the street scene so much, but that's only a personal view. But I do think if it was rendered, that would be more acceptable. It would blend in with the other properties, and I think it would probably look better with actually than the blue, certainly the blue liars. But that's only my personal opinion. Thank you, Chairman. I would prefer render.
Thank you. Okay, but we have the proposal before us from Councillor Hendry, seconded by Councillor Redmond, with the condition to change the blue lights to red brick. That is the proposal before us, and that is on that's down to D2, isn't it? A change onto D2. Okay, so all those in favour.
Sorry, who motioned this?
Councillor Hendry.
Who seconded?
Councillor Redmond.
I'm so sorry, I missed that. But
Okay, thank you. So we will now proceed to a vote on that with the changing condition. All those in favour, please show.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What are you voting, Kathy?
I'm not voting for.
6 in favour.
And all those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 against, and that's 13 members.
So therefore, we are looking for another proposal.
So that proposal's fallen, so we're
Yes.
looking for another.
Councillor Murphy.
Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I would like to put forward the proposal that we defer, that this is a deferred case so that the agent can come forward after discussions with the people who are having this done. I think it's unfair that we should be like yo-yos bouncing around saying we're going to have this finished and that finished. I think it's completely unfair. I personally think that we're obviously looking at possibly a red brick, possibly a slightly less red brick, maybe a terracotta brick, possibly a render. So I'm just thinking we should ask, because this architect is a very well-known architect. He's highly qualified and very experienced in the area. I personally would propose that we defer this one, so to allow them to come back with some more proposals. I don't know if that would be a free go. I don't know, but perhaps you could do that.
If you could respond to that, and then I'll ask Councillor Bradford.
If the recommendation is a deferral, that's effectively members pushing the application back for officers and agents to negotiate and continue on with this application. So
Yes.
you're not making a refusal, it's just pushing it back. There's been a lot of debate over design and materials, and the agent has been here and present for all of it, so I'm sure he can take on those points. And my preference from this seat would definitely be for a deferral rather than a recommendation for refusal. So, thank you.
Okay, so we have a proposal for a deferral from Councillor Murphy, just so that I note that. Councillor Bradford first, and then Councillor Slocum.
That's the lines I was thinking along, Madam Chairman. I'm happy to second that.
Okay.
Move it on.
Thank you.
It's a long
Thank
time.
you. Okay, so. Oh, sorry, Mr. Nimsey.
Sorry, yeah, just to help officers going forward and the applicant whose agent is listening to us, it would be useful to know which elements of the design you would like us to look at. Because obviously we've discussed changing materials, that didn't help the situation. Is it the height? Is it the detailing of the windows, or is it simply that forward projecting gable? Just a clear, because Shanta and Mr. Martin will have to try to please you with their negotiations. It'd be helpful just to know where to start.
Absolutely. Councillor Slocum and then Councillor Grimes.
I would just like to say to look at the design in itself, in company with the street scene. So the gable, we've said, is very large. We don't feel it's in keeping with such an experienced architect. Architect, is that right? Or whatever. I think that he would be able to do this no problem at all. I think that would be much better. Thank you.
Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the gable is the overpowering thing. If you look at that, and like I've said before, if it was all of one colour, it would have been blended in a lot better. So the design, certainly the gable, as far as I'm concerned, to match up with the street scene more. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that noted amongst officers? Sorry, is there somebody else wishing to speak? Okay. Before I go to the vote, is that noted? Is that okay? All right. So we have a proposal from Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Bradford, to defer on the grounds of the design and in particular the gable at the front. All those for that proposal, please show. Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Thank you for the debate. And now I think we'll take a short cocktail break and then we'll move on to the next one. Thank you. Okay, thank you, members, for returning. Right, we'll go on to the next application, which is on page 27. It's another Brentnall application. So, Mr. Evans, if you could take us through the application, please.
Thank you. Yes, the application is for a detached dwelling within Brentnall. The site itself is located on Station Road, south of the highway. You have the railway line here, and the main, you have Brent Street here, leading up to East Brent to the north. So in terms of the site, it's located here, situated between two existing dwellings, a collection of 3 dwellings off this access track here. So we have Jenny's End, which is the applicant's property, and then we have the application site outlined in red here. This application is a resubmission of a previous application, which was refused on highways grounds. The application is before you today with the same recommendation for the same reason. Just taking through the slides in terms of the dwelling itself. So there's no objection in terms of the principle of the development. It's in the development boundaries of a Tier 3 settlement. There are no issues with the scale, position or design of the dwelling, which is 2 stories in height. We've finished in brickwork and tiles. And is of a suitable standard in terms of the the space standards, floor space within the dwelling itself as well. So there'll be good standing living for the property and the future occupants. The site itself has sufficient space for turning and parking, all of which will meet the former county parking standards. And the access will open up onto the shared track here, which is used by these 2 properties here. This is the application site. So we have the front garden area of Journey's End located here. So this is the access route into the site, which will remove some of this wall, and we will have the 2-story dwelling situated between Journey's End and the bungalow here. So this is the location of the dwelling here. It's considered the dwelling's design, scale, and massing all appropriate for the development. The position of the attached garage would ensure there's a suitable separation distance between this property here and the dwelling, which is, sorry, I did say 2 stories, but it's actually 1.5 stories in height by virtue of the dormer style windows to the front elevation and the set down roof. This is a view looking back towards the west, towards Journey's End, with the railway line just beyond, and the site would be in on the left-hand side here, behind this fence line here. This is the access road into the site, so it's a track shared by these 2 properties. There's a further property just off the, just beyond this fence line here, which opens more directly out onto the highway, but still uses an element of the track. And this is the access route onto Station Road. So as you can see from the report, the application is recommended for refusal. We have had an objection from the Highway Authority regarding the use of this access. They consider there to be excessive manoeuvring required to negotiate the turning into the site when you're coming from the west so if you come along Station Road, you turn right, there's a sort of degree of excessive manoeuvrability to get around to the track here. And likewise, this is the view looking back towards the east, towards Brentnell. So again, this is the visibility display looking this way is considered to be acceptable. However, the visibility here is considered to be obstructed by the existing fence line as well as the rising land, and it goes over the railway bridge. So in terms of the application itself, there are no issues with the dwelling's location in principle, its design or scale or impact on residential amenity. It's just that we have an issue with the access into the site, and therefore the recommendation is to refuse, subject to the reasons listed within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. We have two speakers on this item, so I'd like to ask Mr. Townsend from Brentnall Parish Council to step forward again, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So you have the 3 minutes and just start when you're ready.
The applicant moved to the property known as Journey's End at the age of 4, having previously lived in Laurel Cottage in Brentnall. She has attended the local school. The applicant then moved out when she married, but later returned to Journey's End to care for her parents. When the applicant's parents passed away, the house known as Journey's End passed to her brother, but a proportion of the land associated with Journey's End was gifted to the applicant. The applicant wishes to remain in Brentnall and seeks permission to develop the land within the boundary of Journey's End. Journey's End is an old property, formerly the abandoned railway station for Brentnall, and has always had limited entrance and exit to Station Road. The applicant has full knowledge and experience of how to deal with the junction at Station Road. The present occupiers of Journey's End have 2 vehicles, and to the east boundary the bungalow has 2 vehicles and a caravan, all of which use the existing access onto Station Road. To allow the applicant to use this junction will make little difference. At the junction there is clear visibility, as you have seen, in both directions, through a stranded open wire fence and low hedging on the left and a clear road to the right. This was a junction and side road that was established years ago, and since that time, highway development plans may well have increased and improved. However, there are many places throughout the countryside that are very similar unadopted vehicular tracks like we have in Brentnall. This should not prevent people's rights to establish a home and go about their lives with freedoms that we have. This development satisfies the policies S2, T3A, D2, D25 and D1 as determined by your case officer. There are no traffic statistics to demonstrate that this junction cannot be used in a safe manner. I have been a resident of Brentnall for nearly 25 years and have never heard of an accident at this junction. Brentnall Parish Council see no point in refusing this application based on such a minor point made by Highways, and would ask that permission be granted to allow this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. I'd like to call next speaker, Mr. Sebinger, please. Thank you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This site was brought into the settlement boundary at the time the current local plan was adopted in 2019. Consequently, the principle of residential development in this location is accepted as is acknowledged by your officer. The sole issue is that of highway safety, specifically that the access track is too narrow, falling short of the standing advice that requires a width of 5 metres over at least a 6 metre length. During the previous application, the issue of highway safety arose, so the services of Mike Bellamy, a highway consultant with considerable experience and expertise of this area, being a former county council employee, were engaged. The report, resubmitted with this application, stated that the section of standing advice being referred to is in fact for a new access, and in the opinion of Mr. Bellamy, given that the access track already exists and that there are no plans to alter it, that section of the guidance is, to use his word, irrelevant. The access is existing and has been used for many years without any recorded incidents. Historically, this use included that connected with the former railway station and used by Network Rail in conjunction with maintaining the railway. No accidents have occurred at the access to the site within the last 24 years, and the professional advice of an experienced highway consultant is that given this access has been regularly used by 3 other residential properties in that time, there is no evidence to suggest that the development scheme for one additional single dwelling would have any material effect on the safe operation of the local surrounding road network or result in any highway safety issues. In any event, vehicle speeds for those vehicles travelling over the bridge towards the site is naturally slow. The applicant and her son have resided at Journey's End with her brother for many years and are long-standing residents of Brent Knoll. As this dwelling will be occupied by both Miss Hughes and her son, there is an argument to state that the vehicle movements arising from this proposal will, if anything, be unchanged. To conclude, this site has since 2019 fallen within the settlement boundary, where the inclusion implies an acceptance of residential development. Highway safety is the sole issue facing this proposal, which has been supported by the Parish Council. The objection by Highways appears to use standards that are for new, not existing accesses and would appear to have been unreasonably applied in this case. My client intends to live in this property to remain in the village. It is not a development opportunity, but is a way that she can remain in the village that she has lived in for many years. Given this committee has approved the first application today, in spite of considerable local objection to highway safety, I speak on behalf of the applicant that we hope a consistent approach will be applied here for this application where there exists no objections by third parties on highway safety. I'd like to thank you for your time and I hope that you will find yourselves able to grant planning permission for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Mr. Evans, there's been a number of comments obviously about highway safety and statistics and etc. Is there anything you'd like to come back on before I move to members?
No, I have no other information other than what's set out in the report. Like I say, we've had this application received, and in terms of consistency, the Highway Authority have recommended refusal on both counts. So no, we don't have anything further to.
Thank you. Members, any comments? Councillor Bolt, and then Councillor Hendry.
I think it's for Mr. Evans. Is it correct in what the second speaker said, in the fact that the highways part of what they're looking at is to do with the new entrances? Because as I'm seeing it, that entrance has been in use. And the best of my knowledge, I've never been there when there's been an accident. And that goes back more than 24 years. But I'm not sure, I don't, obviously we don't have that legislation with regards to highways and how they make their decisions, as we know.
There is the document that the Highway Authority rely on, which is called standing advice. So standing advice does give out dimensions of what would be a safe access in terms of visibility. More often than not, you can rely on it absolutely if you're creating a new access because you're creating everything from scratch. Where it doesn't comply with it because it's an existing access, other things come into consideration, like how substandard is the access, what type of traffic generation does the current access have, if you were intensifying that amount of traffic by whatever the proposal is it going to be safe? So it's those questions that we would have had the answers to from the County Highway Officer. So I'll just refer you back to Liam if he's found the comment directly.
If I could help on that point, the standing advice element relates to, if I could just quickly go to the block layout. Oh, sorry about that. So the standing advice element involves the access into the site off the public highway, which is where we see the gates there. That is public highway, that little old stopped up road, which was bypassed about 150 years ago when the railway was built. So that's their standing advice element there. To be fair to the Highway Authority, they did have an issue with that. We said, well, hang on a moment, it's an access onto a little track with such little use. Is that really reasonable? And we did work with them and we won them over on that point. The bit that they have the issue with, which standing advice doesn't apply to, is then the increased use of the junction of that little lane with the road coming over the bridge. So that's where they have advised us directly here. I mean, as you can see in the photographs, one way it's absolutely fine. The other way, visibility is slightly impinged, but the main bit there is if you were to turn left out of there, you would probably have to go onto the oncoming carriageway. Similarly, if you were coming from Hybrid Burnham direction, turning right into the site, you might have to make more than one manoeuvre to do it cleanly. And of course, there are only 2 houses down there at the moment, so one extra house is sort of 50% more, if you want to look at it like that. The third house, which I think is the nook there, they come more or less straight in and out without just going across the access rather than going down the little lane. So their manoeuvres are not impeded as much. So it is really just that point of turning left, go over the bridge, or turning right, having come over the bridge. Those are the areas of concern.
Thank you for the clarification.
Could I
Yes.
just come back on that? So with regards to this application, are we actually looking for again, the applicant said they're using, the same people are using the lane, they're projecting the same traffic. Do we have to consider future occupants of the house?
Of course, yes, you need to bear in mind it could be occupied by anyone. The fact that the first user may be more familiar with it is of course a personal matter and not a material matter, because obviously there is no ongoing occupancy restriction. But it is a point they make that someone living here would know what the situation is.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. I actually live not far from this. I know it really, really well. I travel there every single day. It should be noted by everybody that to the one side, 75 metres, you have a railway bridge, which everybody goes over about 10 to 15 miles an hour because it's blind and you can't see over it, so the traffic is really slow. When you go the other way, 75 metres, there's a 90-degree bend, and everybody slows actually to a stop because it's also blind and you can't see which way you're going. The point I'm making is that the traffic up and down that road for 100 metres or so is dead slow. Nobody drives fast. So if somebody was pulling out, there wouldn't be a problem. Go further than that. When you come out of that little driveway, the proposed driveway, and turn right, there's a load of houses both sides of the road. Now, most of them have just a little private driveway. So when they're trying to pull out, the nose of their car comes out first, and they have to really go really, really slow because when they're coming out, it's very difficult for them to see one way or the other. It's no different at all for this property here. In fact, it's probably easier for them because they don't have anything in the way to see left or right. I'm not quite sure why we're recommending to refuse this on highway grounds. If you go there and have a site visit, I'm not asking for a site visit, by the way, but if you did go there and have a look yourself, you would see that their access, exit and entry is actually better, or it would be better than the other houses down the street on both sides of the road. The size of the house, everything, that's fine. We haven't any contention against that. It seems to be only on the highways. If you went there yourself and had a look at this, you would see, undoubtedly, in my opinion, there is absolutely no problem for this at all because it is only one property. It's not 4 or 5. Exactly. If you go back there again, just go back one. Right. When you come out there left, all the traffic, you can see a tall, spiny thing up at the top. That's where the railway bridge is. And all the traffic slows right down to go over the bridge because it's a blind spot. There's a bungalow opposite that you can see that's got loads more traffic. That place over there, if you drive past there, there's about 4 or 5 vehicles in there at any one time. So this particular proposal now, I don't see any problem with it at all. They've got perfectly clear to see both ways, left and right, much better than the houses just further down the road where they've got absolutely no view at all and have to put their cars out onto the main road. As we stand right now at this minute, I don't have a problem with this. I would actually grant permission myself, but I'm waiting for everybody else's debate and listen to what they have to say. But right now, as we start here, right now, I don't have a problem with this as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
I think Councillor Hendry just stolen my entire what I was going to say. I think from my own point of view, again, as you've heard, in terms of highways, I think the access is substantial. I think everyone would agree that. But in terms of the intensification, the nook, which is the one right on the junction, is in that lane. So there are 3 dwellings down there at the moment, and so therefore it's maybe a third increase potentially if you take out the fact that they already live there. My own view is if you read Mr. Evans' report, I mean, it's one of those reports that sort of comes with a sting in the tail. If you read most of it, you think this is obviously going to be granting permission because everything's fine, the design's good, the size is right, the plot's fine, and then highways came at the end. So my feeling would be to actually, I would be happy to move granting permission for all the planning reasons that Mr. Evans put in the first part of his report. In terms of the highways, I think we have had evidence from the highways consultant who submitted their information with the applicants as to why this site is okay, and it is an existing access, it's not a new one. And so on those grounds, I'm happy to move permission with suitable conditions to be agreed with Chair and Vice Chair for the actual property itself. But thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Coombs. So we've had a formal proposal. I've got Councillor Slocum next, then Councillor Grimes, Councillor Bolt, Councillor Bradford, and I suspect you're also going to say the same thing now.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to second that proposal, please. I also, when I read it, thought this is good, this is all right, and then that in the last moment, I understood. But I think this is, I think this should be granted. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify, as the recommendation is to refuse permission based on the fact it was considered to be contrary to policy D14, then it would be the recommendation to grant permission would be because there was a feeling that it did not contravene policy D14. Is that correct? I just want to be clear.
I would suggest perhaps a slightly different interpretation, only because, so members aren't expressing the same concerns that the Highway Authority have. What I would suggest is that members are finding it acceptable because of the appropriate sustainable location, because it's appropriate for the neighbours. So in terms of the planning balance, we have previously refused this one on highway grounds. So that is a material consideration that you have to weigh into the balance of the application. So if you balance in the application and in terms of all other aspects, you're finding it acceptable, but there is a conflict with highway safety, but members are satisfied that the conflict is fairly minor relative to the main overall planning balance, then you can determine that the policies that sit in favour of the application weigh more substantially than the highway conflicts, and therefore if you wish to sort of support the application, I would suggest that route would be more sensible.
So that will be the proposal to accept the proposal based on those grounds. All in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that was unanimous. Okay, thank you. Councillor Bradford?
I just want to make a point, Madam Chairman.
Mike?
We've seen a lot of these things today, before this meeting today. Relatively new, a lot of it. I'm not new on the job, but I always found it much easier. You could put hand on heart and you get a feeling of the job. You go and have a look, and this is a prime example. And you know exactly what you're doing.
There's
Right?
no
You've made the right
restriction.
decision anyhow.
There's no restriction on
important
any of
to have a
us
look. Yeah, I
going
never
to have a
lied.
look. So feel free,
That's right,
everybody.
yeah.
Discreetly, of course. Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the next item on page 47. Yes, sorry. We're going on to on the agenda, planning application number 8, page 47, as that's the next item with speakers. Right. Thank you. So this application is regarding Main Road, Middlezoy. Ms. Chorley, would you like to do the presentation, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application, it's outline only, all matters reserved. Oh, sorry. This is an outline application with all matters reserved for the erection of up to 2 dwellings with associated parking. So we are within the settlement boundary of the Tier 3 settlement of Middlezoy, and it's this is the application site here, this parcel of land. You see it slightly closer on the next image. So it's this area here. The next slide will show you the red outline. As you can see, there's residential development on either side and some agricultural development to the rear. So this is the red line outlining the site. There is a public right-of-way which comes from the highway here, Main Road, and runs to the east of the application site. The application seeks consent, as I said, all matters reserved for the principle of 2 dwellings, up to 2 dwellings within this red line.
Sorry to interrupt. Should there be a mouse showing? There's no mouse showing. Ah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Doesn't marry up with what's in front of me. So we have here the indicative site plan that we have. So this isn't for approval at this stage. This is just to demonstrate that it is possible to fit 2 dwellings within the site and a possible arrangement. So this shows the retention of the agricultural track that's there at the moment, pedestrian access from the main road, and a pair of semi-detached dwellings with parking to the rear and a turning area. So just to give you an idea of where we are, I've just stood in the junction opposite the application site, looking at the existing dwellings to the west and the existing dwellings here to the east, and that's the public right of way that I mentioned previously that also provides access up into the site and to the agricultural land beyond. It's just a couple more views looking slightly further down the road in both directions to give you a bit more context. So as I mentioned, it is an outline application only, so we are looking to establish the principle of development. All matters are reserved. It is material that this is one in a long line of applications. So the permission has been granted previously on the site for similar development. The last application expired in January of this year. We've got this application again, which is seeking to renew that effectively. As I mentioned, the application site is within the settlement boundary of Tier 3 settlement of Middleroy. It is flanked by residential development on either side. The proposed density, we are looking at up to 2 dwellings, is not considered unacceptable. And the siting, size, scale and design, together with access, parking, landscaping, would all be determined at a later reserve matters application. Now, concerns have been raised regarding the siting of the proposed dwellings and the proposed impact of loss of light on the neighbouring property. It's not addressed in enough detail there, but I also wanted to raise that does also raise a concern about the accuracy of the block plan and this kind of how that relationship is with regards to both the front of the site and the neighbouring properties. But obviously, as I mentioned, it is indicative only, so there's very limited weight that we can give to the block plan. We are looking at the principle of the outline. I've measured off the existing dwellings next to the roadside against our mapping that we have, and also the mapping that we plans that we've previously, and that they do seem to correspond. There is a slight difference with the block plan, which shows them set slightly further back, but as I said, that's not a plan that's up for approval at this point. And my view is that it doesn't change my recommendation that there is still scope for 2 dwellings within the site. I don't think it would result in any undue overlooking, loss of light or visual domination within the street scene. There are 2 side windows, which if we just go back, you can see here. One serves a bedroom according to the floor plan that we've got approved for that property, and this is a secondary window to the living area. So the indicative block plan indicates that you'll be looking at around a 4-metre separation distance, but as I said, that is indicative only. So in terms of siting, that's something up for discussion at a later point. Highways and parking. The site does adjoin the highway. There is an existing access in place that's there for agricultural use. It is considered that there is enough scope within the red line for parking to meet planning advice requirements, but it would be for the reserve matters application to demonstrate the detail of that. The application site does lie within the settlement boundary for the parish of Middleroy. It is not within a back consultation zone, neither does it fall within the catchment of the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar. A condition would be applied to any permission to require a programme of mitigation enhancement measures as part of reserve matters, and a further condition is also recommended to restrict external lighting. This is to ensure that the lighting is limited to the site only and doesn't have any adverse impacts in terms of ecology as well. Part of the site does lie within flood zone 2. It's a small parcel to the western front corner. The rest of the site lies within flood zone 1. On that basis, it's not considered that it is likely to have any unacceptable impact in terms of flood risk, as it's very likely that it would form only part of the front garden and amenity space. And there'd be no expectation that any dwelling would need to be sat within flood zone 2, neither would the access. In terms of pollution impacts, Environmental Health have suggested conditions for a watching brief for contaminated land. This is a more precautionary approach than what's previously been taken, but the condition would only require a watching brief, and as such, it's not considered that it's particularly disproportionate for the applicants. So in summary, the proposal is for outline consent only, with all matters reserved for the erection of up to 2 dwellings. And the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions.
Thank you very much. We've got 2 speakers on this item. The first one is Karen Haffey, and she is going to speak via Teams. So I hope that the technology works.
Hello there.
Hello there. Oh, hi there. Thank you.
Hi. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And I appreciate this is only outlining planning consent, but I wanted to get my concerns put across. So the plans submitted, first of all, are not correct, as it shows the boundary for our property to be a lot wider than it actually is. The gap between my property and the fence appears to be quite wide, whereas in truth down the side of my house is approximately only 4 foot, which then narrows down to approximately 2 foot down the side of my garage. The planned properties are close to the fence boundary, and the planned position will cause the light to be blocked out to the windows on the side of my house, those being a living room window and bedroom window. Also, potentially block out the light to another bedroom and the front living room patio doors, which are to the front and the right hand side of that property. So I believe building properties where currently they are planned will severely reduce the light into my house. I'm told by the Parish Council that the original plans, which were put in some years ago and before I lived at my property, had then being brought much closer to the front boundary, which then be in line with the existing property to the right hand side. And then would mean the planned properties would have much larger back gardens, which seems to be more sensible. I would also please ask you to consider whether trying to fit in 2 semi-detached properties in a small plot would be considered as an overdevelopment. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping that well within the 3 minutes. Thank you. We'll now move on to the next speaker, which is Mr. Fenton, James Fenton. You have your 3 minutes to start when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. The proposal is put forward in outline form with all matters reserved for future consideration. As the case officer has already said, there is some history with this site. And as much as outline planning permission, from what I can determine, has been granted for similar proposals some 6 previous times over the years. The most frustrating aspect of this proposal is perhaps that for whatever reason the site has yet to be developed. However, nothing has really changed in planning terms since the last approval in 2019. With the recent change in ownership, it is the full intention of the new owner that if granted again, the site can be developed out and provide 2 much needed homes within the village boundary. The reason behind the parish's change in stance to a proposal which has always previously been supported by them is not really clear, but nevertheless, the proposal, it is felt, accords with all relevant planning policies. The site falls within the established development boundary for the village. Although only presented in outline form, it can clearly be seen from the indicative plan that 2 3-bedroom properties with good levels of amenity space and sufficient parking can be accommodated on site. I am struggling a little to see the parish's concern with this. Details pertaining to design will be addressed at reserved matters stage, and hopefully their concerns addressed at the same time.
We respectfully ask members to follow the officer's considered recommendation and grant permission for this proposal. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Mr. Chorley, there were some issues raised with the first speaker. It did seem quite detailed, but I didn't know if you wanted to come back on anything that was raised.
Thank you, Chair. If it might help, I can just go back to the site photos. So members have got that separation distance kind of clear. Just so you can have another look. So, which one's the best to show you? So here we're looking at, this is the neighbouring property in question and the boundary there. And this is obviously the width of the entire site that we're talking about for two properties. And so just to give you an indication, this is around 11.5 metres, the distance, this pair of semi-detached properties. And the gap here you would have before, assuming this existing agricultural tract remained intact, is broadly similar. In terms of the siting, the previous application showed them in a broadly similar position, albeit slightly shallower in depth. So actually they kind of finished, I suppose, slightly further forward into the site. So the indicative block plan that's been provided with this application shows slightly deeper scale of property. But it's important to remember that we are just looking to establish the principle. We're not approving at this stage the siting or the scale of the dwellings. We are approving the principle for up to 2 dwellings. The remainder of that consideration would come when we've got that detail and to be able to make that assessment. At the moment, it is their scope for 2 dwellings within this site without having an unacceptable impact. Bearing in mind we are in the settlement boundary and the site is flanked by residential on both sides. And it's for that reason that my recommendation is for approval at this time.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Members, any comments? Councillor Filmer.
I'll kick off first anyway. I mean, I can understand the concerns of the lady who spoke first, and obviously, as has been highlighted by the case officer, this is an outline application, details of exact plans, and I'm sure we'll make sure that the boundaries of the red line are correct on any reserve matters. And again, in terms of light impact, that will come when it comes to reserve matters. I would just like one clarification on the final slide that you put up. Could you just confirm that this is up to 2 dwellings? Because I think the final slide says 2 dwellings, and I think we all want to be convinced, potentially when the reserve matters comes in, that 2 work. I wouldn't want us to have signed off that it's definitely 2, it's up to 2 if they can make that work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an error on my slide. Apologies. The description of development is for up to 2 dwellings. But yes, we have previously, as the agent of the client, agreed to.
And based on that and the fact that this, as you say, this has twice been before it's got permission, I can't think there's any reason why not to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. So we have a proposal from Councillor Filmer. Is there any more debate or a seconder?
Madam Chairman, I'm happy to second that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the proposal to support the officer's recommendation to grant permission for the outline permission. All in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to page 55 for the application in Othery. And that is Mr. Noon. If you can, oh, no, it isn't. It's Mr. Titchener. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, if you'd like to take us through the application, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So yes, this is an application at Danville House in North Lane, Othery. So it's a proposal for extensions to that property. So this is the application site here. Outlined in red, you can see the footprint from the aerial of the property. It's a very recently consented property, actually just being under construction at the point the aerial photographs are actually taken. The dwelling's actually finished. Primarily, you'll see from some of the photographs in a second. Bear with me just a second, just getting some notes. Okay. And this is a location plan just showing the red line of the application site and the extent of the site with its access through here. So this is the existing block plan. It shows the footprint of the house, which is a reasonable sized house, but in a fairly generously sized plot. This plan also shows relationships to the neighbouring properties. I think that's probably key to considerations of this application. Also ask members just to note the position of this existing hedgerow here, which would be affected and lost by as a result of where the extension is to go. So this is just the existing footprint of the dwelling within the plot, ground floor plan in proximity to the hedgerow. And these are just the existing elevations of the property, so front and side, again, rear and side there. So this is the proposed site plan. So the extension is all to go on this side of the property. So it has this sort of link attached section here, and then these in perpendicular format to the link, these sections running down towards this boundary of the site. So this shows its footprint. And as I mentioned, in terms of that hedgerow, you can see here that this would require removal of that hedgerow, given where the extension is to be positioned. So this is the proposed ground floor plan of the extension. So the plans show the proposed use of the internal space, which would be shown as a gym, as a dog room, store, and then an external carport at this assembly point. So in terms of the nature of the uses, because I think this has generated some comment in local representations, the applicant has confirmed that uses are all to be ancillary to the use of the dwelling. So they're not, none of these things are to be used commercially, they are for the applicant's own personal use. And then just moving on to the elevations. So these plans show the elevations. So this sort of asylum plan. So this is the sort of link attached section here, which connects to the new proposal here. So and then this shows as if you were stood between the old and new sections, as it were, looking towards the frontage. So it is a relatively large footprint, but in terms of proportion to the existing dwelling, in terms of the overall size and scale of the existing dwelling, which is itself large and set within a relatively generously sized plot, we would consider it to be acceptable. Materials are proposed to match the existing, so it's sort of rendered finished matching tiles, matching aluminium frame windows. This is another drawing just shown from the other angle, just showing the link and then the two sections of the proposal. So this slightly deeper projection and slightly higher ridge of the most southerly sort of store and carport. And then just some photographs showing the dwelling as it currently is. So this is as you come in up the driveway, the proposal to be on the far side of this dwelling. So this is the elevation of which the extension would be added effectively in this direction. This is the hedgerow that I mentioned that would need to be lost to facilitate the proposal and then lost in its entirety. These are just some other photographs just looking across the site. So sort of stood back within the site looking across that hedgerow towards some of the existing properties, some of which you can see just the ridge lines within the background. And again, some photographs just stood sort of where the extension is to go, seeing the relationship with those properties which sort of ring the edges of the site. In terms of that relationship, which is part of the scheme that's caused the most contention locally, the height of the extension has been reduced through negotiations. So from at its highest point, which is that carport bit on the southern extent, from a height of 6.5 metres down to 5.8. It's along that that boundary here where obviously the most potential sensitivity would lie. So what has also been negotiated in through the application is the planting of replacement hedgerow. Whilst we acknowledge that this hedgerow would need to be lost to facilitate the development, new hedgerow is proposed to be planted along this boundary here. And there is a condition on the permission to that effect, which control it. And I know that the most recent comments of the parish council, who were consulted twice on this, the most recent comments stated that a hedgerow in that location would certainly help assist, notwithstanding their previous objection, would certainly help provide some softening and filtering of views from those nearby properties. So again, just another view of just the nearby properties. So there are no windows on the side elevation of the proposal here facing the neighbours, so we wouldn't consider there to be any impacts such as loss of privacy or any overlooking that could arise. I think if that was something that members felt strongly about, there would also be the option potentially to remove PD rights, so things like roof lights on that elevation if that was felt to be of benefit. It's not a condition that's currently proposed in the report. And again, just another final photograph just showing the views in that direction, just in terms of the properties that are most closely affected. But overall, our view is the size of the plot and the existing dwelling is such that there is space to accommodate the proposal. It's a backland plot, so there aren't any wider impacts in terms of street scene, character, etc. There's no loss to privacy to neighbouring properties, and it is to be used on that ancillary basis. So our recommendation is to grant the planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this item, Jill Brill. Would you like to come forward, please? Thank you. 3 minutes when you're ready to start. Thank you.
Firstly, I'm one of the 6 residents living in the Elm Tree Close properties whose residential amenity will be dramatically affected by this proposal. You're only seeing the pictures from the side of the actual site. If you could see it from our side, you would have a completely different view. Firstly, this would be one long building structure, 83 feet in length. 83 feet in length. Just because they've moved it slightly away and reduced the height, to look out and see a building that size is absolutely horrendous. From my conservatory window, not only the side windows, back windows, every window I look at, all I can see is buildings. Beyond that long 83-foot building structure is a massive Danvia house already there. It is bad enough with Danvia house, but to put an 83-foot building complex is absolutely beyond words. I consider that would be totally unacceptable and visually dominant. Secondly, noise issues. The very large dog room, which is over 36 square metres, will be within a few metres of my bedroom window. All residents in the Elm Tree Close properties have already had to endure and suffer noise disturbance from dogs on this site. We have been kept awake for hours on end with dogs crying and barking throughout the night. Our neighbour had to raise a complaint to the owners because dogs, including puppies, had been left in a building right outside our bedroom windows. For the council to now ignore this identified risk of potential future suffering by granting this permission right outside bedrooms, I consider that the council could be deemed negligent in its actions and open to liability claims in the future. Thirdly, the size. The original planning permission granted for this self-build scheme on land beyond the village settlement boundary was for one dwelling house. Danvia House is already about 1.5 times a normal dwelling house. This proposal would make the development the size of 2 properties, and that is completely beyond the original planning permission. Fourthly, the self-build rules require that it's a necessary need for accommodation. A gym, there's already a gym, the garage has been converted into a gym, so there will be 2 gyms, a 40-foot dog room, a garage which they've now called a storeroom when there was already permission for a dog garage, and a carport 83 foot long is not a necessary need for accommodation under the self-build scheme. Fifthly, standalone building. This is set 6 metres away from the main Danby house. It has the same impact and footprint on the land as an annex on countryside property. And I think you should also look to see whether or not that should be taken into account. This footprint will double. Finally, the hedge, that will not help us at all. A 20-foot hedge.
Sorry, your time is up. Thank you. Mr. Kitchens, there were various issues raised about the impact regarding residential amenity. Would you like to respond to that, please?
Yeah, I think in terms of the impacts, as I said during my presentation, it was obviously the properties that are on this side in Elm Close are the ones that were most likely to be affected. I think that was picked up by us as case officers when the application came in, because the original proposal was for the proposal to be located sort of right tight on the boundary, so it's still in its sort of north-south alignment, but sort of within just a metre or so of the boundary. So that's something we've been mindful of throughout and sought to try to address some of those concerns by getting the applicant to move the proposal. So it's moved about 5 metres or so to the west, and also brought about some reductions in height. So as I said, this section here, which is the higher section, but is actually the section which is sort of furthest from some of the neighbouring properties, this bit here is probably the closest, has had its ridge reduced in terms of from 6.5 metres down to about 5.8. So those considerations are something that we've been mindful of throughout, and also to try and increase by getting the planting in here. Not only does that replace the loss of the existing hedgerow for some ecological mitigation factors, but also once established and over time will provide some filtering of use from those properties here. So the separation distance is it's mainly the roofscape that is the factor that is likely to be seen by the neighbouring properties, rather than any sort of walls. It's above the eaves level. I think that is probably going to be the thing that that would be more in their view than the existing built facade. Bear in mind that it would be set against the background of the two-storey built facade, which they would already see. So yes, we're aware of those issues, and that's why we've tried to some amendments to the scheme in front of you today.
Thank you. Is there any? Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Case Officer Dean Titchener, just 3 questions. The dog room, it's just, I'm a little bit hazy about that. Is that a commercial type of thing or private? Second question is, how far is the dog room from the nearest property, i.e. I suppose the actual speaker there? And third question, and last, I know we can't give a figure here, but just approximately, how many dogs are we talking about? Is it just 2 or 3, or is there a lot of dogs? We don't really know, but like, principally, is it commercial or private? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yes, so so we asked the question of the applicants, is this to be a commercial venture or is it to be run on a good residential basis? And they confirmed that it's not commercial, it's to be run on a residential basis. So it would be their own dogs that would be living in the property. If they wanted to set up a business to run this place on a commercial basis, that would probably almost likely be a material change in use of the land requiring planning permission. So that would have to come back for consideration to us. So in terms of the number of dogs, given it's for personal use, we wouldn't have the answer to that. Is how many dogs anyone could, might own in a property, and that will vary with each dog owner. In terms of the separation distances to the properties, so that varies. So at this point, it's about 11 metres from properties. Further down, it is about 15 metres. So that's about 50 metres property to property. So somewhere in the middle where the dog room is obviously going to be somewhere, so say about 13 for argument's sake, there or thereabouts. In terms of, it's a blank facade, so there's no doors or windows on that. So in terms of noise emitting, there's no, you're not going to open doors or windows for the noise to get out. So that's quite a contained room with any sort of doors and windows focused on the west side, which will help to if there is noise arising from that, directed back towards the applicant's own property. So, and which is why I mentioned, if we needed to, we might be mindful to remove permitted dwelling rights to something like roof lights, so they couldn't go in and put a roof light, along that roofscape, which they could open up and which could emit noise. But yes, just to sum up, essentially it's a personal use only, with doors and windows on west facing elevations.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, just follow-up question. I just looked at the online responses, and there weren't very many statutory consultative responses. Just a question, bringing up one of the speakers made reference to some complaints to the environment team. I just wondered whether they were logged and whether that's been a consideration if there were issues. Next is in relation to the building itself, and you indicated that the outside will have no open spaces, but what build is it going to be? Is it going to be insulated in any way, single skin, etc.? Because that would be an issue that I would need to understand. So what is the build and what level of insulation is there likely to be? That's for now, Chair.
Thank you.
I'll just deal with the latter point first in terms of the extent of the build. I mean, it will need to comply with the latest building regulations. So the level of insulation would not normally be a planning matter. It would be something that would be dealt with at the next stage after planning. As it's for residential use, the standards that apply in terms of building regulations for a residential use will apply. So that's, and building regulations were updated as of June last year, particularly in terms of thermal and energy efficiency. So that increases the level of insulation. I don't know the exact detail because it's not a matter we'd normally go into. On the first point, I mean, we've not been made aware of any complaints in terms of sort of dog noise, and it's not necessarily something that statutory authorities would necessarily notify us about, because it's a separate issue from planning. The council does have a dog officer, who will investigate those complaints if they arise on particular sites, unrelated to planning necessarily, and that would obviously continue to exist if there were further dog noise related complaints in future.
Could I continue to come in, Chair?
Yes.
Just in relation to that, sorry, that was my licensing hat coming out of going into the room for a second there, to just being clear about that. So the indication is it's for domestic use only, and they will be subject to the statutory requirements that lay down in insulation. My concern was if it was an outside building or a shed build, then it would potentially not necessarily have the same level of insulation that a domestic property would have. So the clarification is in relation to that. And you've already clarified with them that it will be personal use as opposed to a trading facility. There was an indication in one of the speaker's comments in relation to puppies, and I don't know what limitation we're able to put. If it's one or two dogs, then they own themselves, and there wouldn't be much noise. If it's 6 or 7 dogs that they breed from regularly for personal issues, then that would change the perspective of things. Just like a little bit of clarification around the comments that the applicant has made in relation to that.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the conditions, obviously the information you've had from Dean Titchener is right. It's a domestic extension for domestic purposes, which is what's been confirmed in terms of the application. As such, if they were to use it for a business operation, that would require a change of use. In terms of certainty, because of references to puppies, there are often enforcement cases which look into how many litters of puppies do you have before it gets to be a bit of an enforcement issue. I think for clarity, we could probably add on a personalised condition to make it absolute that it's for the occupiers' dogs only and not for any form of business or enterprise, just to make it clear that that's the will of the committee if the committee's going that way.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just continue, I would think that I would like that to be added at least for a minimum to guarantee that the property will be used for the things that we're potentially considering now.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond. Councillor Hendry and then Councillor Slocum.
A couple of points here. On the subject of puppies, just to follow on Councillor Redmond here, on the subject of puppies, the Kennel Club states quite clearly a dog shouldn't have pups until it's 2 years old, and they're supposed to finish when they're 6. So that's a maximum of 3 litters at 2-year intervals. If you have 6 or 7 dogs producing litters every year, if that's the compensation, then you have to apply for a license through DEFRA. That changes that, moves the goalpost completely. So my logic, my instinct would tell me that it's only probably private, maybe 1 or 2 dogs, something like that, and it's every 2 years. Moving on from that, the case officer said that the rear of the building facing the adjacent properties has no windows or doors. Am I correct in saying that? So what would stop anybody asking for a condition, which is not an expensive one, by the way, to add external cladding on the outside, okay? Which, when I say cladding, I mean insulation, to what Councillor Redden was talking about. I don't know, it's about 50 millimetres. I'm sure Mike Murphy would know that. It's 50 millimetres. It comes in sheets, which are 8x4, I think, as well. And it's not an expensive thing, but it would dampen the noise down completely, to be fair to adjoining neighbours. So in short, if we do grant permission, could be added as a condition to consider external insulation sheets, which are actually cladded onto the walls. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of adding a material, I feel like we've talked about materials a lot today. In terms of adding material, the difficulty is with conditions, we have to make sure they comply with the test. So the test is that they need to be reasonable, they need to relate to the application, they need to be enforceable and necessary. I understand why the requests might be made. The difficulty is if we haven't got evidence that suggests that it's needed, it would be unreasonable to impose that condition at this point. So if members are satisfied it's a domestic extension for housing dogs with the family and it's not a business, it's not an enterprise, you're not expecting to see, lots and lots of litters of puppies causing lots of noise disturbance, it would be unreasonable to impose that condition in terms of mitigating an impact that might not potentially happen. I do understand, the neighbours' perspective, but in determining the application, we have to make sure that we comply with the test with the conditions we impose.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to come back on that.
Okay, everything you said, absolutely fine. One other little thing that was in the back of my mind, because given us a dog room, are we talking about a single block wall or a cavity wall? Because that does make a big difference in noise. So you've got dogs and puppies in here, and you've got a single block wall there. Noise is going to go through it. So it's a cavity wall. Do we know that?
I mean, our assumptions would be, as I said previously, because it's a residential scheme, the standards for extensions under the building regs will apply, and that would be, I'm almost certain that would be a cavity wall, okay, because of the need to achieve the levels of insulation that
of course,
required. So I think that I'm almost certain that would be the outcome that you'd get.
Okay, well, on that basis, Chairman, I've listened to everybody said, and as it stands, because everything seems to fit and it's all technically correct, I propose to grant permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hendry. I'll note that. So we've got 2 more speakers first. Councillor Slocum, then Councillor Bolton, Councillor Filmer.
Right, Councillor Hendry, was it to move to recommendation with the personal condition? The personal condition.
Or occupiers dogs only.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I assumed it was, but I would come round
That's
to
okay,
check
you
that. Yeah.
can almost do that.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What I'd like to know is if this was a commercial building, then it would obviously have a higher level of insulation, than a private dwelling. Please forgive me for being slightly cynical. I cannot believe this is not going to eventually end up being a commercial venture. And we all know how easy it is for change of use. I'm just a little worried about this because at the moment, if it's private, it doesn't need to go through the rigours. If it's a commercial venture, then it would obviously need to have a much higher standard. Am I correct or no?
I mean, notwithstanding that if it was a commercial, we would have to consider on those merits, and unlikely, because of the nature of the activities, the standards that environmental health would expect the applicant to demonstrate would be higher, because they would want most likely noise impact assessments to understand the likely noise arising, and that in itself may well generate mitigation, and mitigation may well be greater insulation than you might get even with a residential scheme, for argument's sake. I mean, there's a lot of other factors if it came to an application that would also come into play: the nature of the use, the location, the nature of the access. But those would be for a separate application if it came to it. We can obviously then consider the application on its merits.
Madam Chairman, could I just say that surely knowing what the objections have been, the concerns about noise especially, wouldn't it be in the applicant's best interest to be able to put the highest standard of level of insulation if he wants this passed?
I'm just going to come back to the 6 tests of conditions again. If we've asked the question what the extension's for, and they're saying it's a domestic extension with a domestic room that they're going to keep their 1 or 2 dogs in, that will be controlled through building regulations in terms of noise and insulation standards, it would potentially be unreasonable for us to request industrial strength noise assessment measures and mitigation for something that may not happen, and it's not what they're applying for. So I know with partly retrospective applications there's often a bit of a bitter taste in people's mouths, but the application is for a single story extension to a residential dwelling which has a dog room in it. The construction of the residential extension will have building regulations sign off in terms of how it needs to be constructed. I would suggest, given the sensitivities of the neighbour, it may be beneficial if members want to recommend the additional condition in terms of limiting roof lights on that particular roof slope facing the neighbours, because it would just remove any question about additional openings on that side. Yeah, and a condition to restrict any other openings on that elevation, just to ensure that we don't end up with openings that could cause any degree of disruption. But they would be reasonable interventions for the scale of the application you've got before you at the moment. If the application did end up coming forward as a change of use at a later point in time, they would have to demonstrate how the change of use doesn't affect neighbours, how they've considered traffic impacts, and whether we think a business use behind and surrounded by residential properties is appropriate or not. But that's a future application, that's not this application. So we have to keep on the line of the current application and the constraints that we've got with the current application. But I would suggest a couple of additional conditions may give you the reassurance within the scope of this application.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bolt.
That's exactly where I was going with regards to the conditions. Removal of the permitted rights.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, likewise, and there was a couple of questions I could just ask, because the speaker raised the issue of self-build policies, and I think if we just have some clarity that this is an extension and therefore necessarily falling foul of that, but also you've mentioned the commercial use. If this ever came forward again for separate use, if you could just clarify whether or not that would require an application, would be helpful. And the final question I was going to ask was, in terms of ecology, is there anything being done in terms of bees, bats, birds, with the removal of the hedge and replacement with obviously a new one? I just wondered what there was in terms of ecological benefit to this particular development.
So just in terms of the self-build policy, yes, I noted reference was made to that policy, and we talked about the need that those tests apply to the application we previously dealt with for the erection of a dwelling. We're looking at extension here, where we're looking at where the factors are related to effective policies D2 about its design and policy D25 about the residential amenity, which is where the discussion has been. So we're satisfied that the correct policy approaches have been applied. I mean, yes, in terms of other uses, they require permission. Yes, we get the opportunity to look at to test that again. In terms of ecology, condition 3 is the main one about ecology. It's got two arms effectively. There's the hedgerow that we are replacing, and the ecologists also asked for the planting of 2 native trees within the site. So, it's something they'd asked for. We're happy to condition it. So there is some enhancement, given the level of enhancement is always proportionate to the nature of the scheme. So it's an extension to the level of enhancement. It has to be proportionate to that. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, then Councillor Grimes. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add my voice to Councillor Slocum's concerns. I too have an interest in the idea of having a dog room at the end of a passage somewhere else in the house. Every dog that I've ever had has ended up sleeping either on the bed or on the sofa. because they're part of the family. I don't know why they'd be at the end of the house. So I'd like it to be put on record to see if in the future this comes forward for a commercial application. That's all really. We'll watch out.
Thank you. Councillor Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman. I must agree with Councillor Slocum. I might be cynical. I've been on the committee quite a while. To me, I look at this. Does it say anything? Can I ask a question? Does it say anything how the build is on this? Does it mention cavity wall? Because looking at this, if it's a storeroom and it's away from the main building, it could be a single skin. And I can't see why they would want a big space if it's supposed to be attached to the house, if it's just a storeroom, a garage and a dog room. If that was against the main building and you went through one door to get into that building, I wouldn't have a problem with this. I look at this and I do have a problem with this. And I'm sorry, but I won't be voting for this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, could we have absolute clarity and assurance on, given the stated nature of the purpose for this annex?
The difficulty I think members have is it is a real challenge, because the application that's before you to look at to determine is a residential extension. We've gone back to the applicant and they've confirmed it's a residential extension. It's connected to the house, so it would be governed by building regulations, which falls outside of planning, so we can't comment on that. We can't comment on the potential use of it as a business, because they have confirmed that's not what they're applying for. They're applying for a residential extension. Within the remit of the application we've got, we can put on enough controls that would try and reduce impacts. But what we can't do is recommend refusal on something for a potential future use, because that's not what we're looking at. If a potential future use happens, we can all say, predicted it here first at committee, and it doesn't work very well at committee when it's retrospective. But members who are on committee also know if it's retrospective, it can't hold any weight in the determination of the application. But if it does subsequently come forward as a different application, there will be different considerations and different material balances to make at that point. But what we cannot do is penalise an application for a residential extension for a potential future use that isn't before members today. So before members today is a residential extension to a domestic property that's been confirmed it will be used domestically, which members so far have suggested a condition to require that to be the case, just to be absolutely certain, and removed PD rights for doors and windows on that elevation to try and minimise any potential future impact from the domestic use of the extension on neighbours. If it ends up being anything other than that, it should come back through planning, and we will have another bite of the cherry if it comes back through that route. But apologies, members, for being the stick in the mud.
Thank you. Councillor Hendry.
One last point. I've already proposed to grant permission on that, and I stand by it anyway. We are only ever allowed to look at and deal with what's on the table in front of us, not what might be in the future, whenever that future comes. It has to be what's on the table here and now, and that's it there. Okay? So whether it's commercial in the future, that's another day. We can't decide on that. Looking at all that, everybody's debated what's on the screen, what we have in front of us. There's actually no technical or even legal reason to go against this today. Everybody's got their opinion, it's absolutely fine. But I stand by totally everything I've said, and I propose to grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to clarify, that's to grant permission with the two extra conditions. One about adding a condition for to be occupiers' dogs only and not business related, and the other one prohibiting roofs, lights and windows and openings on the side facing the other. So that is a proposal. Do I have a second?
Just an addition with regards to permission rights would just stop anything going into the loft. It's, 6 metres almost high on one end. It would stop any further building up. It's only to be used at ground floor. That's permitted development, isn't it?
residents use it.
Just to clarify, Councillor Bolt, are you talking about the use of the loft space potentially, just so we fully understand?
It's, I can see it all at one level. And then all of a sudden we got to 5.8 metres, wasn't it, to Ridgeline? Which I'm not sure if that would be enough to actually put another room up above the garage.
So you'd be looking to preclude?
But no, does that come under permitted development rights to stop that from happening?
If they wanted to build up any further, that would need plan permission. I don't know if that's what you're.
Yeah, that's all I was on about.
Thank you. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you, Chair. And most of my points have been clarified. That was the reason why back at the beginning I asked for caveats to be attached to it. I'm not denying the fact that there may be alternative objections for this application, but as has been indicated by Councillor Hendry and the officers, we need to be based on the decision on the information, but also then to try to protect the objectors within our conversations. And I think we've covered as much as we can. Yeah. And I'm conscious that we keep getting reminded about legal elements and reasons for denying, etc. Based on the information I have in front of me, the information the amended points that have been made, I would be happy to second the proposal.
Thank you.
And be clear that it is because I feel that there's no other way forward in this. I understand, and I hope, because there's a potential should it come back for business use or change of use, there is also licensing implications in relation to it and other caveats that can be attached that are being chased. So, you know, hypothetically, should the application be successful and there are issues against noise, which I would recommend any of the neighbours to then continue to be raising, because the more evidence that is generated, the better the argument. And that would then also raise a flag potentially should a change of use come along.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Redmond. Councillor Smedley. Did you put? Oh, no, sorry, Councillor Bruce. I thought.
Thank you. Just to help me make a more informed decision, when the original application came through, would this footprint have met the conditions of the site? If they'd put that in the original application, would it have been okay? That's the one point. And then I've looked at the parish council objection mentions the application number of the original, but that's just an outline, the number they've put on there. But it does have a condition about the construction work and the times that it can take place. And I wonder whether we need to take that condition into account also for this one, if it is eventually approved.
Thank you. In terms of whether it would have been acceptable or not on the first application, as a self-build, the requirement of the condition is that whoever builds it or designs it is the first occupier. If we're looking at impacts, we've looked at the impact of the single-storey additional footprint and determined that actually there isn't any harm on neighbouring properties in terms of the size and scale and design of it. So we are recommending approval for this application. That would suggest if it came forward as one dwelling with the additional footprint, we would have gone the same way in terms of recommendation. So the requirement for the self-built property is whoever occupies it first needs to be the person that designs it or builds it or commissions it. So there's no restriction on the self-built property in terms of the ultimate size of the dwelling that you should have. We look at the dwelling and we look at any subsequent extensions to dwellings under policy D2 in terms of, is it appropriate in terms of size, scale and design? Does it have any impact on the boundaries outside the site? In this case, the extension as originally submitted, we did have some concerns about, so we pulled it away from the boundary, we reduced it in height. So we have made some amendments to address our concerns with it. But I would like to think that we would support it as the full application were that the position, but that's a theoretical question after the processing. But there's nothing in the policy that restricts or limits the footprint of any self-built dwelling. I thought there was another question.
Yeah. The other one was about the times and days of construction work going on.
So construction management plans, we usually impose them if they're in built-up residential areas, if it's for a dwelling, for example, because the degree and scale of impact of building a dwelling or 6 or 7 or 10 or major development can be quite significant on neighbours. We don't tend to impose them for single-storey extensions, but there is obviously a sensitivity issue with the neighbouring properties. So that again is for members' gift. If you felt that it was reasonable in this case to try and safeguard amenity for residential properties, we wouldn't usually for this scale of development, but it's for members for determination.
Councillor Hendry, as the proposer of the resolution, would you opt to add the extra condition around hours of operation for the construction, isn't it, or not?
Quite frankly, I think it's been a bit harsh actually, and that's the honest truth of the matter, because builders, as the year goes on, June, July, August, the weather's better, they tend to work earlier and work later. So I do actually think that's a bit of a harsh condition to impose, and I really do mean that. So you're asking me the question, I would say don't impose it. However, to actually get this through and say, okay, if everybody said that's what they want, then I'd have to go along with it. But my own opinion is no, that's a bit of a harsh condition to ask for.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So, as things stand, we have the proposal with the two conditions as stated. I'd ask for all those in favour to show, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in favour.
Thank you. And those against?
2, 3 against.
And
12 members.
so that's no abstention. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you. Have a short comfort break, 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the final two applications. Okay, thank you. All right, so we now go back to page 35 for the application relating to Redmore Road, Cheddar. Ms. Chorley, can you take us through, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for land west of Wedmore Road in the parish of Cheddar. And the application is seeking consent for the erection of a single dwelling house on the site of an existing stable block which is to be demolished. So we've just got a couple of photos, aerial photos here, to give you a kind of indication of where we are. So this is the built-up area of Cheddar, the reservoir over to the west, and our application site is just this parcel of land here, which sits along Wedmore Road. And the aerial image just to the right of your screen shows that in slightly more detail. So this is the application site. Got an orchard area here, and then a built-up area that extends along this lower North Road, I think. There is development going on in this parcel here since this aerial photo was taken. So the residential development has been consented and that is underway, is referred to in the report. So just to give you an indication of where that is. So this is a location plan that we have, again, just showing that area of land outlined in red, and the existing access which is to be upgraded. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a moment. This plan shows you the existing settlement boundary for Cheddar, just to show the application site's relationship to that. So this is the application site again here, and that orchard area that I mentioned previously. So the application site is directly over to the east. And this is the site plan as existing. So this is the existing built form there, the stable block that's there, and the access point. And what we have proposed is a new dwelling to go on the footprint broadly. It's a 1.5 story dwelling, parking and turning area, an electric vehicle point there, and this is the upgraded access. So here we have some elevation drawings showing the dwelling for you. So it's single story with the first floor kind of within the roof space there. And just the roof plan and the floor plans showing the nature and type of accommodation that is delivered. So it's relatively modest, detached dwelling. And just some site photos to show you within the site at the moment. So it's a grassed area of land. There is obviously some additional kind of residential activity taking place at the time of the site photos. Just looking at towards north, towards where the orchard is beyond that, and then looking west towards the existing hedgerow boundary, and then looking kind of from the gate over to the southwest. And this one is taken across the road, looking into the existing access, and showing the kind of hedgerows that bound the site as it is at the moment, that existing access way. And these photos are just taken from within that access, so you can see the visibility at the moment, how restricted it is to the north. There is, I'll go into that in a little bit more detail, but that would be improved as part of this application. So to begin, the application site is outside of the settlement boundary, which forms part of the Parish Council's reason for objecting. Sites that are outside but well related to the settlement boundary can be acceptable if they come forward under our self-build scheme. They need to be physically and functionally well related. Policy is contained within policy D9. In this case, the application site lies to the southwest of the settlement boundary for the Tier 1 settlement of Cheddar, as I've explained. And as I mentioned, it is a material consideration that there is a reserved matters application for 58 dwellings, along with associated open space and landscaping underway on the site to the east of the road. There is a gap to Sturt Cottage to the north, but nevertheless, there is considered to be a pattern of frontage development along that west side of the B3151. There is a lack of connectivity in terms of footpath, but this isn't dissimilar to the existing dwellings that are there on that western side. And it is noted that it would also be improved through the new development opposite. So that really is key in terms of that kind of functional connectivity to the settlement itself. And bearing all of that in mind, it's considered that it is sufficiently well related in this case for the locational requirements to be met of policy D9. During the course of the application, the applicant has registered on the self-build register. There isn't a need to confirm a local connection as it is a Tier 1 settlement. And a condition is recommended that the building be occupied as a self-built dwelling. So as I mentioned earlier when we looked at the elevation drawings, it is a 1.5 storey self-built dwelling, render finish to the elevation with coining detail and a timber veranda area. A condition would be needed to secure approval of the materials to make sure that we do secure high quality design and finish, and for the roof and fenestration to be confirmed. The siting of the proposed dwelling is such that it is set back into the northwestern corner of the site, with the views kind of looking out towards the remainder of the site rather than towards anything else. The dwelling height is to measure 6.3 to ridge and just over 3 metres to eaves. The dormer detailing to serve the first floor gives rise to what appears as a more modest design within the site, and that's considered to be the appropriate design response for its rural setting. In terms of amenity, concern has been raised regarding potential overlooking to the dwelling to the north. But as you can see in the aerial images there is an intervening orchard space which is understood to be within the ownership of the neighbouring property. But nevertheless, the separation distance is circa 77 metres, so it's not considered that there is any kind of significant overlooking that would give rise to a recommendation for refusal. Notwithstanding that, the majority of the openings are directed to within the site itself, and it's not considered, therefore, that there is any unacceptable impact in terms of those neighbouring occupiers. In terms of future occupiers, the dwelling is of an acceptable size and scale with a generous degree of amenity space, so it's considered to comply with the requirements of D25. In terms of highways and parking, as you would have seen from the photos yourself, existing visibility, particularly to the north, is limited. Somerset Highways Department did raise concerns about that, and we've worked with the agent during the course of the application to improve the access, secure visibility displays, and there is a condition recommended there to make sure they're delivered prior to first use of the site. That will require that mature hedgerow to be set back, and that there is another landscaping condition to make sure that that is done and agreed. The access itself is of a sufficient width, with the access gates set back to allow vehicles to leave the highway without any queuing. In terms of ecology, as I mentioned again, the site is bounded by mature hedgerows. There would be some temporary loss whilst they are transplanted. The condition would require anything that is lost to be within the first 5 years to be replaced. A scoping survey supported the application, which concluded that the site did not provide any significant roosting opportunities for horseshoe bats, and it was not considered to provide any kind of greater opportunity for foraging or as a commuting site. Somerset Ecology Services have confirmed, therefore, that there was no need for a habitats regulation assessment, but conditions are suggested as part of the recommendation to secure a lighting design for bats, ensure that anti-glare glazing is used, and protect the balance of the retained hedgerows and trees from damage during construction. So again, that was all incorporated within the landscaping condition that's suggested. The planting of a habitat enhancement area is suggested within the survey that supported the application, and sparrow boxes, and again, there are enhancement opportunities that would be secured. So in summary, the principle of development is considered to be acceptable under the exception policy D9. The size, scale and design is considered to comply with the requirements of D9 and D2 in terms of delivering that high quality of design, and it's not considered that it would give rise to any unacceptable amenity impacts. The improved access would be secured, and there is then sufficient parking and turning within the site. Ecology conditions again would secure sufficient mitigation and enhancements as part of the development. And subject to those conditions, my recommendation is for the approval to be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no speakers on this subject, so it's over to you. Any comments, observations, proposals? If nobody's got any comments, can I be looking for a proposal, please? Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Absolutely no problem at all with this whatsoever, and I agree with the case officer to grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second that.
Yeah, thank you. So the proposal has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, and we go on then to the final item of the application of the day, and that is page 63 on your agenda papers. So it's the installation of internally illuminated signs at Dunbar. Mr. Noon, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, thank you. This is an application retrospective for the retention of a number of eternally illuminated signs that have been added to the new petrol station at Dunbar Roundabout. That's the one on the northeast corner. And there are also two totem signs. A little misleading that one of the totem signs is actually attached to the front of the building. So there's one freestanding one, the other one is on the building itself. Here is the site. It's when Google flew over, it was a building site, but we're dealing with the bottom sort of left-hand corner nearest the roundabout. It's on a site where permission exists for a sort of petrol filling station, a couple of drive-through units, and the employment land on the northern half of the site. So here is the site itself as far as the application is concerned, the red square in the bottom left-hand corner, the triangle. In more detail zoomed in, we have the freestanding totem sign at 8 metres high next to the roundabout. A number of signs across the frontage of the petrol station building itself, and these ones stacked up here are sort of the totem sign. I think your screen, not that screen. Is it? I've fallen into that trap, apologies. So you can see here, stacked up here, 3 to 11 are the totem sign on the front of the building, a couple of freestanding ones on the facade, and then we've got the new totem over here. There's one already here that was approved under a previous application for other stuff at the site. There is the frontage of the building. It's branded as Asda with a number of retail outlets within it. That's what the signs are for. And you can see that sort of stack on the right-hand side is the attached totem sign. The blank gables and the blank rear, they've actually got some signs on it for the Greggs element of the drive-through, but that was approved under a separate application previously. And then there's a little bit of signage there that says, "Welcome to Dunbar Services." And then there's the freestanding sign that goes out at the front of the site. sorry, this one here, there's some detail there. So that's the freestanding, the other one was the one, sorry, apologies, the one attached to the site. And then quickly to look at some photographs. First one, courtesy of Google Earth, the site's still under construction, but you can see it's opened up a lot. A lot of the hedgerow has been removed as part of the development, including the creation of the new access into the site up just on to the right up here on the A39 going north. That's all been agreed. There is a landscaping scheme in there. It looks pretty stark at the moment, but the landscaping is in there, and we are today just looking at the signs. So on the opposite side of the road, sort of stood in the first petrol station, looking across at the new one. So it's branded up with Shell petrol there, and we're looking at the signs to do with the building itself. You can see the totem sign on the right there is already installed, so we can see what it looks like in situ. And then there's the front of the building with the signage across the fascia and the standing totem sign on the front of the building there. Just this was from the application documentation, provides a slightly better view of it, but that was whilst it was still under construction. And there's the freestanding totem sign. So as an application for advertisement consent, there are just two issues before us. They're not in fact tied to the local plan, they're just set out in the advert regs. Those are matters of highway safety. The Highways Department have said no objection to this. They are happy with this. And amenity in terms of the degree of the amount of light that these would create. The site has changed in nature. It is a commercial site. It is a sort of essentially a service area. There are a number of our adverts already approved there. These, I think it's fair to say, are a lot less bright than the petrol station on the other side of the A38. They are in fact fitted, if we look very closely in the drawings, there is some annotation in the red there to say that they've got dimmers fitted on it. This reflects a concern raised by our port officer at the Port of Bridgewater, who is concerned because the boats come in, they line things up, and if there's a great big glow in the background, it causes difficulty when they come in at night. So we do have that ability to control this lighting, and that is installed as part of the application. So going back to the key considerations, the amenity, it is what it is. It is a commercial location. The lighting is modern LED stuff. It is not as bright as the old stuff you might have got with sort of strip lights inside a plastic glowing sign. So from that respect, the sort of move to LED, I think, is a positive here, and the amenity concerns, I think, are not such that we want to refuse this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Noon. Councillor Redmond.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the first instance, you indicated two totems, and this said you said that one was already in. You said one was on the side of the building. This is the clarification. So it's one totem in the corner of the property. The second totem is already fixed to the building.
Yes, that's correct. They are in fact both there. One on the building as per the photo, one freestanding.
Double check they've got permission. They own the appropriate land for this time.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I was surprised when you said earlier that when Google flew over, it was a construction site. But it was a construction site and finished for a long time. But Google hasn't been back for a while then.
Yeah, they've driven past more recently than they've flown past.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. Councillor Slocum.
I would just like to move the recommendation. I can see a lot of work's been done on this and a lot of bits and bobs on the recommendation. So yeah, happy to recommend it.
Thank you. Councillor Bolt.
Yeah, I can second that. The one of the other service stations that had similar lighting, there was a problem with. And they just went in there and they just turned it right down. It was and absolutely no more complaints. It was brilliant, so I'm quite happy to say.
Okay, that's useful to know. Thank you. So we have a proposer and seconder to grant the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show. Oh, it's not actually. Yes, now it's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so that concludes the final application and the end of the meeting. So thank you all. Thank you for your contributions and forbearance. It's been quite a long meeting, so thank you. Well done.